The Xbox Activision deal is now facing off with the FTC. The case has been going on for a few days. It's not over, but I thought in the middle of everything that's been going on, I would need to do a bit of an update. This is going to be a long opening monologue because there has been so much that has come out. And even today, as I'm going live and sort of doing this episode, Jim Ryan is set to take the stage. This thing is far from over, and there is a lot to comb over and go through. Now, I stated previously I was going to hold off on covering the Activision Blizzard deal with Microsoft unless I absolutely had to, and as much that came out even in the last 24 hours. I was late to start this morning because I was still adding things to the monologue as they just continue to be revealed from the outlets covering this. Now, I put all of the good information right here at the beginning so you don't have to go looking for it. It's a live stream. Once I'm done with the opening monologue, I discuss it with the live audience. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, the bell button, and that like button. It helps the channel out, and then you won't miss these live episodes. So the Xbox Activision deal is now facing the FTC, and so much has come out that an update was needed. We have comments from Phil Spencer, Pete Hines, and other various topics about, like, is there a console war? Why did Microsoft actually buy Bethesda? Even the PlayStation 6 entered the discussion. So first, I want to give you a recap, highlight some of the biggest revelations. Obviously, I cannot recap the entirety of the case and everything that was stated. And the second thing I want to do is give you my thoughts from everything that I've learned. The bulk of this monologue is going to be me trying to recap everything that has been said. What I found unsurprising is how both Xbox fans and Sony fans are claiming that one side is winning. From where I sit, it's hard to declare a winner, but it seems that Microsoft has revealed way more than they probably wanted to. None of this came out underneath the scrutiny of any of the other regulatory bodies who pushed this thing through and approved it, so it's a little worrying that we're just now hearing all of these different things. This ultimately is still in question whether this has been revealed, that it will lead to a preliminary injunction or even a successful block, because they're still not done. So let's get to the recap, okay? Keep in mind, I'm doing my best to recap a litany of big things and revelations that have come out. There will be new things that will come to the surface after all of my research and my monologue is complete. There'll be more things that come out. So just try to remember, I did this on the morning of June 27th. That's when I am making this video and doing this live monologue. So if something was absent from this, I'm going to try to do a final follow-up once the entire FTC case is done. So I'm going to start with the bigger and the more recent revelations. I'm not going to do this in order of how everything came out. Many of the journalists were just sort of live tweeting and then putting it into blog format. One of the things I think that is most damning, or at least most worrying, is the recent revelation from Pete Hines that really backs my theory that Bethesda was not just unhappy about having their title suddenly set to exclusive. I don't think they expected it to happen. Now, you may have seen this email floating around. I'm going to put the image up on the screen. You're probably going to have a hard time reading it, but this is the email in question. Now, there's two different emails. There was one that he sent to Phil Spencer that was worded a little bit more diplomatically because he was, wanting clarity on why their titles were being set to exclusive and why Xbox was out here saying that Call of Duty would not. Now, in this email, he says, "I'm confused. Is the below not the opposite of what we were just told to do with our own titles? What's the difference? Emphasis is bold. In bold is mine." So he made bold. This is like from a blog post in the middle here. But the thing that really highlights this is that he's saying that we were asked, parentheses, told, to do with our own titles. Now, if you go back to the interview where he said this wasn't his decision, this wasn't his call, and he was basically apologizing, I tried to tell folks, I said, I don't think Bethesda likes the fact that this is happening. I don't think they're happy that this happened with their titles. And what he has bolded down here is the following quote: "We have committed to Sony that we will also make them available on PlayStation beyond the existing agreement in the future so that Sony fans can continue to enjoy the games they love." Pete Hines is clearly not happy about this. You're out here saying you want Sony fans to continue to enjoy the games they love while you barged in the room and told us not to do it. This doesn't just square with the interviews where Pete Hines basically apologized. This also squares with Todd Howard's blog announcement. If you've seen my coverage of this, I went back to the original announcement of the merger, and Todd Howard said that this is like our original agreement. This is not about one system, only to be told that all your games are Xbox exclusives in the wake of the deal. But Pete Hines isn't done. He actually ends the email by asking a question. He says, "Did anyone at Xbox think about giving us a heads up on this? Todd's going to DICE in a couple of weeks. You don't think a journo might find him and press him on why the below is okay for Call of Duty or any Activision Blizzard games, but not for the Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield or any or every future interview he does?" He's thinking any and every future interview is going to highlight this. Why are your games different than Blizzard Activision games? Why are your games limited? If you combine this with the observation about the blog post from Todd Howard, I really do think that Bethesda was sold a bill of goods. They did not think they were going to get purchased and suddenly all their titles are exclusives. This doesn't really feel like case-by-case basis the more you look at it, and Pete Hines seems to agree. Now, there's even more, I think, beyond this. That's just sort of the internals and the track record of what happened with Bethesda. We also have an email from Matt Booty that everybody's trying to hand wave away, claiming this is an old strategy. We also have Sega, Bungie, and over 100 developers that were being considered for purchase. First, from The Verge, Microsoft considered acquiring Bungie and Sega to bolster Xbox Game Pass, internal emails show. What did they say? "We believe that Sega has built a well-balanced portfolio of games across segments with global graphical appeal and will help us accelerate Xbox Game Pass both on and off console," said Spencer in a November 2020 email. Now, this doesn't surprise me. Xbox struggles with their global appeal. I think Sega makes sense as a target. It ultimately didn't happen, but I get what they're trying to do. Spencer also makes it clear that they believe that Asia is critical to success. Quote, "The global appeal of Sega's beloved IP will help expand Xbox Game Pass's reach to new audiences around the world, most notably in Asia, where localized content is critical to success." This is sort of an undercurrent as to why Microsoft has struggled for the last 20 years. They can't really get a foothold in the Asian market. This has been an ongoing challenge, so what Phil Spencer's saying here makes perfect sense. But according to The Verge, there were lots of potential targets. Microsoft had identified key areas for acquisitions in PC, mobile, and console across different markets, and Sega, Bungie, Zynga, and IO Interactive were part of the number of companies Microsoft was seriously looking at acquiring. You have to wonder, would Microsoft have been more successful with smaller targets like Sega, Bungie, and Zynga? They would have been able to enter mobile, they would have been able to have live service support with Bungie, and Sega would have helped them in the Asian market. Ultimately, all that didn't happen. Funny enough, Pete Parsons was out here telling everybody it wasn't true that there was offers between Microsoft and Bungie. Seemingly, those talks were getting ready to happen. Maybe that's where the leak came from and people just got it wrong, and Bungie never sat down to the table. Time will tell. More's coming out in the coming days. But this ties in, I think, with the 100-plus potential dev targets for buyout, with the other being the most recent ones of Discovery. The Verge had this to say. Microsoft was ready to go spend Sony out of business to strengthen Xbox. Now, I'm not quite sure how we're supposed to read these headlines and these emails from Matt Booty and not conclude that this merger is a problem, but I'm going to share my thoughts on this in a moment. According to The Verge, Microsoft Xbox Game Studios chief Matt Booty was encouraging Xbox CFO Tim Stewart to spend big money on acquiring game content in 2019 to set the company up to battle Sony in subscriptions. Now, do you remember everybody saying that this Matt Booty email was not about buying companies? It's just, he just happens to be saying we can spend Sony out of business in 2019 right before they start acquiring companies and putting an acquisition strategy into place. Does anybody actually believe that? Does anybody believe that he said we can spend Sony out of business and that's not what they're trying to do? That's not the plan that they're implementing? His own email betrays that Sony was the only real competitor to Game Pass. This is what he said. "We, Microsoft, are in a very unique position to be able to go spend Sony out of business," said Booty. He was referencing spending $2 billion or $3 billion in 2020 to avoid competitors getting ahead in content at a later date. That's exactly what they did. They spent money to get Bethesda, I'll touch on this in a moment. The reason they did this was to prevent Sony from getting ahead. To claim that this email is not about their strategy is stupid. It's so clear. It's not compelling at all to claim that this email had nothing to do with the strategy that they employed. He also said this: in games, Google is 3 to 4 years away from being able to have a studio up and running. Amazon has shown no ability to execute on game content. Content is the one moat that we have in terms of a catalog that runs on current devices and capability to create new. Sony is really the only other player who could compete with Game Pass, and we have a 2-year and 10 million sub lead. So he is directly saying that the strategy to bolster their catalog, to bolster Game Pass, their only real competition is Sony, in the same email where he says, we can spend them out of business. So he doesn't really leave room here. He elaborates. He makes it clear. He is advocating for Sony being spent out of business, and they're going to do it with Game Pass and bolstering their catalog. In the years that follow, they buy Bethesda, and now they're trying to buy Activision Blizzard. I found it humorous that Microsoft was actually considering walking back day and date, and Booty was having none of it. If we reverse course on day and date, it's going to be hard to convince folks that things like Mixer or xCloud have much of a chance of surviving scrutiny either. This is especially comical in light of what happened to Mixer, so I thought these highlights were good to start with first, since they really set the stage for what Microsoft is trying to do, and why people supporting this deal, they don't seem to really understand how Microsoft operates. But don't worry, there's more. Remember when a few months ago we said that it seemed like Starfield was headed towards being a PlayStation 5 exclusivity? Do you remember that? And do you remember when I theorized that there was a pattern emerging, that Sony grabbed Deathloop and Ghostwire and timed exclusivity, and it seemed like Starfield was headed toward the same deal, and then it seemed that Microsoft got wind of that and stepped in to buy Bethesda to stop that from happening. It turns out that is literally, to the letter, what happened. I mean, you can't make this up. We dunked this in the dark. This is exactly what happened. PC Gamer's headline sums it up nicely. Phil Spencer says Microsoft bought Bethesda to prevent Starfield being PlayStation exclusive. What exactly did he say? When we acquired ZeniMax, one of the impetus for that is that Sony had done a deal for Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. To pay Bethesda to not ship those games on Xbox. Keep in mind, it was timed exclusivity. They were paid for timed exclusivity. This is something that Xbox has done. They weren't paid to keep them off of there permanently. It was a timed deal. Everybody's doing this these days. Between the two consoles, the last 10 years, this is pretty common. He goes on. So the discussion about Starfield, when we heard that Starfield was potentially also going to end up skipping Xbox, we can't be in a position as a third-place console where we fall further behind on our current content ownership. So we had to secure content to remain viable in the business. So there you have it. One of the main reasons they bought Bethesda was to stop Sony from getting another timed exclusivity. And I can't blame them. Starfield is a lightning rod title, and stopping Sony from landing another timed exclusive was a smart play. But this certainly quiets all of the haters who said it was never going to be a PlayStation 5 exclusive. Y'all are real silent all of a sudden. Or you really can't say that this had nothing to do, or this isn't the reason they bought Bethesda. It quite literally is the catalyst for the merger. Keep in mind, they're showing a pattern of behavior here. Remember when they said they want to spend Sony out of business? They didn't counteroffer on Starfield. They didn't try to nail their own exclusivity. They literally spent $7.5 billion to stop Sony from getting another timed exclusive. I want you to really think about that. And then I want you to think about what the $69 billion represents that they're trying to spend right now. Are you still not convinced? Okay, well, before I move on to the next discovery, I just want to include another quote from Phil Spencer, because the continued narrative that Xbox's failures are somehow Sony's fault is just truly remarkable. Quote, "Every time we ship a game on PlayStation, Sony captures 30% of that revenue that we do on their platform, and then they use that money, among other revenue, that they have to do things to try to reduce Xbox's survival on the market. We try to compete, but as I said, over the last 20 years, we've failed to do that effectively. That's true. You have failed to do that effectively, and it's remarkable that this sentence even left your mouth, Phil. To say that 30% of the revenue of games you ship on PlayStation is used against you? What, has Sony put that in a special bank account marked "Let's Hurt Xbox"? All the revenue goes into the company and is therefore then used for different strategies and different exclusivity deals. It's not as if 30% of the money that they make on games that you suddenly own is specifically allocated to hurting you. And I'm curious what games you're referring to, Phil. What games are you shipping on PlayStation, pray tell? Maybe you're referring to the games that you purchased through acquisition, like Minecraft or Bethesda titles. You don't see the irony of buying those games, going through those acquisitions. Those games were already in the market. Some of those games were already on PlayStation, and you're worried about the 30% that Sony makes off them, using it against you. The irony is so thick here, you could cut it with a knife. So Sony's doing what you're doing. They're using their revenue to be competitive, to edge out the competition, to have an edge. It's remarkable to hear Microsoft, of all companies, having a problem with this. Matt Booty said it, didn't he? Let's spend Sony out of business. Let's continue. According to Game Informer, Indiana Jones has also been confirmed to be an Xbox exclusive, continuing the trend of barging in the room and changing deals. But like everything else Bethesda had, it was not going to be an exclusive. Pete Hines again to the rescue. Hines says after Microsoft acquired ZeniMax in 2020, the agreement with Disney was amended to transition the Indiana Jones game away from a multi-platform release and instead into one that will release exclusively on Xbox and PC. So that case-by-case basis is, once again, not very case-by-case. Everything was immediately changed or amended to be Xbox only. And I'm not faulting them for doing that, but it's a pattern of behavior. Then things turn a bit comical when it comes to Call of Duty. According to thegamer.com, Xbox finally admits Call of Duty will run worse on the Switch. After many vague statements, Phil Spencer admits Call of Duty on Switch won't compare to Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. I don't think this is a smoking gun, by the way. I just thought it was funny. Phil Spencer was very hesitant to admit this, saying, well, it'll look equal to other Switch games. Even his final admission is pretty gentle. I think it'll play as a great Switch game. I don't think it'll look the same as Xbox. So I'm not sure if he's worried or if Xbox is worried about this hurting their case, because there's a lot of public bluster about, oh, we're going to put Call of Duty on the Nintendo Switch, and the FTC seems to be taking an interest in it. Maybe Phil is just being diplomatic. Maybe he doesn't want to be on record saying anything negative about Nintendo. I'm not really sure, but it did seem funny. He was hesitant to admit that Call of Duty's not going to look as good as on the Nintendo Switch. Gamers are like, yeah, we kind of knew that already, but the FTC certainly took an interest in it. But then we got to learn about Activision squeezing Microsoft for more money on Call of Duty. And in zero self-awareness comedic fashion, many on Twitter were somehow blaming this on Sony. I found that hilarious. According to thegamer.com, Activision threatened to remove Call of Duty from Xbox over revenue share. It's been revealed that Activision Blizzard once forced Microsoft into a new revenue share deal using Call of Duty as leverage. Now, according to the article, Activision apparently refused to prepare its Xbox dev kits unless Microsoft offered up a revenue share similar to what PlayStation had been offering, and that Kotick, quote, intended to not place Call of Duty on Xbox if it didn't agree. Even thegamer.com is not compelled here that this had anything to do with Sony. Quote, while this is a pretty big bombshell to drop during this suit, it's very likely that Activision Blizzard did exactly the same thing with PlayStation 2, as the entire situation reeks of a publisher throwing its weight and power around to demand special treatment. Or it could be motivated by quantity. You have less customers on Xbox. You sell less copies of the game. Bobby Kotick wanted a better revenue share. It's hilarious that Kotick is out here doing interviews, hurting the PR for this deal, and now we see that he bullied Xbox into a higher revenue share on Call of Duty. You can't help but laugh at the irony. You also can't help but laugh at the fanboys who think this is somehow Sony's fault. I want to highlight two more things before reading what an Xbox spokesperson told Insider Gaming after the first day. In a Microsoft document submitted to the FTC, they admit they lost the console war, okay? Xbox has lost the console wars, and its rivals are positioned to continue to dominate, including by leveraging exclusive content. Xbox has consistently ranked third in consoles behind PlayStation and Nintendo. Now, I wonder if I'm allowed to say console war now. You know, anybody going to react to this video and find it shocking I'm saying console war? It's in official documentation from Xbox in an FTC case. Console war. But don't worry, Microsoft's not done. According to thegamer.com, Phil Spencer thinks the console wars are a social construct. Quote, "The console wars is a social construct with the community," says Spencer, giving evidence to the second day of the FTC trial. He goes on to remind the FTC that Microsoft is hardly winning this theoretical console war too. Quote, "If you look at our market share in the console space in the last 20 plus years, we're in third place." So it's weird to say there really isn't a console war, but then we're in third place is a major aspect of your defense of the Activision Blizzard deal. But there's not a console war. The last thing I want to do is highlight that Call of Duty continues to be a red herring. It's been a red herring since the beginning. It's not the focus of this case. It doesn't even really matter in the grand scheme of things with the leverage and the power that Microsoft's trying to wield. According to IGN.com, Phil Spencer once again assured everybody that Call of Duty will ship on the PS5. He said, "Sony obviously has to allow us to ship the game on their platform, but absent any of that, my commitment is and my testimony is that we will continue to ship future versions of Call of Duty on Sony's PlayStation 5. And the spokesperson then told Insider Gaming, so this is after like the first day, quote, "Today showed Sony has known all along we'll stand by our promise to keep games on its platform and made clear its work to lobby against the deal is only to protect its dominant position in the market." It's so funny that Microsoft has a problem with the company protecting its dominant position in the market. That's literally their strategy. It's what they do. It's their MO. They've been doing it for a long time. They're just grumpy they haven't pulled it off in gaming. Now, this was in response to Jim Ryan admitting in an email that he wasn't concerned about Call of Duty leaving PlayStation. But it's more complicated than that. Everybody thought that was a smoking gun, right? Jim Ryan admitting, yeah, we're not really worried about Call of Duty leaving. He made it very clear that he wasn't there for a new Call of Duty deal. He was there to block the merger. And I believe that Call of Duty has been a public red herring and a distraction from the real plan. Even in the Jim Ryan email, he admitted that he thinks Microsoft is thinking bigger than Call of Duty exclusivity. And this is when the PlayStation 6 enters the picture. So many people have no idea why this is so important. During this trial, it became known that if Call of Duty was owned by Xbox, Sony would not share PlayStation 6 details with them. According to TrueAchievements.com, an FTC deposition with PlayStation boss Jim Ryan in April says that Sony would not share immensely sensitive details about its next console with Activision if it was owned by Xbox. Excuse me. As shared by Axios Stephen Totillo on Twitter, a transcript from an FTC deposition with Jim Ryan on April 6 says that Sony won't share immensely sensitive details with Activision Blizzard if Microsoft's proposed acquisition is approved. Now, I was shocked that people found this to be a big deal or worthy of note. This is pretty standard practice. Would Xbox have been okay with sharing their own hardware production plans and their struggles with Sony prior to the Series X and the S launching? Would they want to share that with Sony? Would any company launching new hardware be okay with sharing those details with their competitor? This is where Sony's concern about getting an inferior Call of Duty makes significantly more sense. It also makes sense as to why they took issue with future Call of Duties not leveraging technology on the PlayStation. That was in one of their official documents saying they're not going to leverage the technology on the PlayStation like they do right now. They would be stuck between two bad decisions. You either share the PlayStation 6 dev kit info with your competitor so that way you can ensure optimization of Call of Duty, or you get a game that would require optimization and patching in the launch weeks and months after. It certainly wouldn't run very well. It would be a degraded version of the game. They wouldn't be able to choose between the two because you're either damaging to Sony and their hardware plan by sharing with your competitor, or you get a worse version of Call of Duty. Both of these are bad for Sony, so their concern was valid. And one final tidbit, since nobody thought this was true, we now have it as a matter of record that the Xbox cloud services were prioritized over the Series X. We used a Windows Central article. Jez Corden tried to draw attention to this. Nobody believed it. They didn't believe it when he said it. They didn't believe it when I said it. But the Series X is not a priority. This backs up the Series S is the main console, that story that we recently ran with as well. Everything pretty much shaping up as we called it. So, what are my thoughts on this? First, it's hard to deny at this point that Microsoft is attempting to leverage spending in an anti-competitive way. Matt Booty's email is not an old strategy. It quite literally is the strategy. Spend and lose a bunch of money now to prevent Sony from becoming the Disney of gaming, as he referred to them. They continue to focus on Game Pass, and his insistence on day and date not going away proves that. You can clearly see all this playing out right now. Look how they've marketed and pushed the Activision deal. It's practically a paraphrase of Matt Booty's email. Let's buy up all this catalog, let's buy up all this content to put it on Game Pass. And he admitted Sony was the only clear competitor to Game Pass. In the same email, he said they could spend them out of business. And this is where so many people who cheer for this deal don't see the Leviathan behind the curtain. Microsoft can afford to spend Sony out of business. That's not a false statement. He didn't say that and get fired. He didn't say that and get told, "What are you talking about?" He said it because it's true. They can. They could lose money on Xbox and Game Pass and mergers for the next 20 years, and they'd be fine. They could silo up all the catalogs and all the contents under one umbrella. Phil Spencer even made it clear that this deal has nothing to do with console growth. That's not what this deal model is about. It's about mobile, cloud, and the ecosystem. Stop thinking about Sony for just a second. If Microsoft can afford to outspend the gaming console leader, what does that mean for every other avenue that they want to enter? Booty argued that almost nobody could spin up a video streaming service today because of all the companies that are already up and running. Doesn't that sound like spending leverage that Microsoft is going for? Getting to a place where nobody could really compete with us. Sony's the only one that can, and we can outspend them. Matt Booty argued that both Amazon and Google are not even a threat to Game Pass, and that Sony is the only one that could compete. Keep in mind, I'm not saying that Microsoft's trying to grow Game Pass and their ecosystem is wrong, but it's clear their method is about loss lead and outspend. In other words, we have enough money to spend and lose for years, making it impossible for others to stand against us. That's the definition of anti-competitive. Game Pass by design requires mass consolidation, then you don't have to pay your third-party content, and it'll give you the ability to force subscription model on people. And I know everybody will say, but Sony does exclusivity. Yes, Sony pays for timed exclusivity and exclusivity contracts. That's something that both parties do. That's not the same as mass consolidation loss leading. That is market control. That's outspending to put your competitor out of business. The grand irony in all of this is that Microsoft has so much money and they simply failed to enter the gaming landscape effectively. Now, some of that has to do with the birth of gaming and how it arose from Asian countries and Asian companies, and it's made it very difficult for Microsoft to enter that market, which Phil Spencer admits is crucial and critical. But their failures are their own. Allowing a company who is clearly and privately planned to employ anti-competitive mass spending to buy Activision Blizzard will be a failure of the regulatory bodies. The countries that waved this through clearly did not do their due diligence. All the bluster about the FTC having no power and no teeth, and in just a matter of days, we have a completely different picture of what Microsoft is trying to do. Will the FTC successfully block or get their preliminary injunction? After all we've seen, I certainly hope they do. Now more than ever, it is clear this deal is not about gamers. It's not even about Xbox. It's about Microsoft. It's always been about Microsoft doing what they've always done. They're going to outspend, they're going to edge out the competition, and they're going to harm anybody in their way till they're the only one left on the field. So let me give you my thoughts and my conclusion. While everyone was busy keeping score, tweeting this event, I was busy playing and discussing video games. Obviously, it hit too high of a fever pitch to ignore, and we will likely have to do a part 2 with Jim Ryan taking the stand today. But as I feel myself torn between wanting to just play and cover video games, I can't help but read these emails and these discoveries from the FTC case and think that Microsoft is bad for gaming. I don't know how you can look at their strategy and their approach, their failures, and their attempt to gobble up companies and not see that their presence in gaming is bad. Secondly, the Matt Booty email can be excused or you can claim it's an old strategy, but the facts are the facts. He clearly saw that content war was the strike they needed to take, and they went from 6 first-party studios in 2017 to 23. in 2021. In 4 years' time, they quadrupled their studio count. And now you want a $70 billion acquisition to add more. Anybody denying that the outspending strategy was put into place is just lying to themselves and the public. Conclusion. Fanboy talking points simply cannot obfuscate the mountain of facts coming from this case. The attempt to spin it is embarrassing. Watching them try to is humorous, but worrying because they're convincing many people that this is all great, and this is going to be great for gamers. Bethesda was clearly surprised by all of their titles being immediately turned into exclusives, and many gamers continue to think this is all about Call of Duty. This is about market control, and that's the clear difference. Sony has a history of buying small devs, investing in them, growing them, and then everybody wants to point to those exclusivities as like, well, this is totally fine, it's the same thing. They also have a history of paying for timed exclusivity. None of that was anti-competitive, as Microsoft has employed the same strategies. That's meaning that both companies can do it, both companies have the money to do it and the leverage to try. Microsoft has a clear advantage in that competitive realm. It's as evidenced by these mergers, as evidenced by the recent merger. They can compete with Sony in an exclusivity war and in a spending war. Why aren't you doing that? Well, the difference is companies clearly don't want to be exclusive to Xbox. So, as we've seen evidenced with Bethesda and Microsoft reacting to Starfield going to PS5 exclusivity, well, they'll just buy the company and they'll force them to be exclusive. Is that the company that you want owning another chunk of the industry? I certainly don't. I truly hope this deal fails for Microsoft. Not because of what Twitter will have you believe, right? That I'm some Sony pony. They think everything's rooted in fandom because that's how they're motivated. They want the deal to go through because they're a fanboy. Not because they've studied the economics behind it, not because they've studied market impact and what will happen and what it will do to the landscape and the control that it'll give Microsoft. Heck, most of these people don't even know Microsoft's history. They're just a fan of the green. But because they think in that way, they think everybody else thinks in that way. I'm against this deal today for the same reason I was months ago. It's bad for gamers and it's bad for the industry. And that's the show open. I hope I covered it about as good as I could. I kept the open at 30 minutes, and buddy, did I go fast. That was a 39-page document. I'm practically out of breath. I really, really hope you guys have enjoyed the gaming coverage lately. Anybody coming in that's just going to insult me and be called a pony, you're just going to be banned. We'll just replace your white badge with somebody else with a brain. Thanks for stopping by and helping the metrics on the channel. Make sure you guys are smashing the like button, get the coffee orders going, Reforge Roast, and really cool announcement, use the t-shirt command in chat. I'm wearing a Ripped Apparel shirt today. My son asked me to do this. You can go to bit.ly/Reforge Ripped. You can use the shirt command in chat. It's bit.ly, you know the bit.ly links, bit.ly/Reforge Ripped. And you can use that, get the shirts at like $14. Get them at like $14, and you guys can enjoy that, and that will work. That will work to support me. Raptor coming in with 5 gifted members. Thank you so much. I'm quickly banning the people who are just insulting so they don't get a gifted member. Thank you so much. We had Everest Thrawn upgraded to a member plus. Newtonian hit 11 months during the show open. Good morning, Lono. Awesome show open. I wish there was a submersible safe enough to navigate the sea salty tears in the chat this morning. Oh my gosh, what a terrible joke. Guys, thank you so much for being here today. Make sure you're hitting all of the buttons. Yeah, it's bit.ly/Reforge Ripped. We appreciate you guys so much being here and supporting us. And Patrick Q coming in and gifting a member. Thank you so much for doing that. We appreciate you so much. It went to Team Ambush. Appreciate you. Raptor already replaced them. That's right. Get them out of the server and we'll fill the place with better people. Such a crazy case. Joker's going to come in gift a member. Hang on, I got to put these up here. What do we have? We have 7 so far. 7 gifted members so far coming in. FCat says Xbox is booty. 5 more coming in from Raptor. He says, I'm not done. He puts us at the halfway point already today. Welcome in so much. Sony bought multiple studios since PlayStation 1. I made that very clear in the show open that that's not the issue with this. I think people don't understand. You're way down here on the bottom rung of the discussion if you're like, but Sony. I don't have an issue with companies doing acquisitions. Both companies have done acquisitions. Both companies have done exclusivity deals. That's not what this is. If you think that's what this is, you have a fundamental misunderstanding of this case. We have it as hard evidence right now that Microsoft is employing an anti-competitive outspend loss lead strategy. That is quite literally what these laws and regulatory bodies are for, to prevent the big spenders from doing what Microsoft is attempting to do. We are not talking about buying a studio. We are not talking about buying a one-year exclusivity deal. You're not even on the landscape of the discussion if that's what you think this case is about. You're just buying into talking points from Twitter or an Xbox podcast. This is so much bigger than that. I got to thank some of these things coming in. Hex with 19 months in a VIP. Always have your back. Thank you, Hex. Andrew with a $2 super chat. Excellent, factual, and thoughtful monologue. Thank you. Detective C's with 14 months in a VIP. Haven't had time to follow all this up. Thanks for the informative update. Jeeves with a gifted member, and it goes to single digit death. Thank you so much. Let me bump the line here to 13. Every 25 I give 5. You guys are going to have to really bounce back. About 30 days ago, you must have gone crazy with gifteds. We're down to like 4,100, so we dipped. You guys were pushing to 5,000, which is crazy. A $5 super chat tip from The Game Night. Nintendo had time exclusivity with Monster Hunter Rise. No one bats an eye. Sony had time exclusivity deals. They're the devil. Make it make sense. It's a distraction. It's a distraction from the discussion, Game Night. Anybody employing timed exclusivity or acquisitions of studios prior to this deal and acting like that makes this deal okay is betraying their fundamental ignorance of the size and scope of what Microsoft is attempting to do. It is an outspend, loss lead, anti-competitive strategy. This is not an acquisition of a studio. It is not. This is so much bigger than that. Def Driver with a 2 spot. Just give me 60 FPS. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. The evidence is so damning. People thought that Jim Ryan admitting that, like, yeah, we're not worried about Call of Duty going anywhere. We'll be okay. They thought that was a smoking gun. But Matt Booty saying we can spend Sony out of business? Like, oh no, yeah, we saw that PlayStation was going to get Starfield as a timed exclusivity. So we just swooped in and spent $7 billion. That's the power that Microsoft has. And you're like, this is fine. This is totally fine. I'm going to get more games on Game Pass. They spent $7 billion to stop Sony from getting Starfield. That is the power that Microsoft has. What do you think they're trying to do with $69 billion? It doesn't have a link. The shirt command does have a link. It's a bit.ly. It's like a smaller. What are you talking about? Oh, hang on. I'll update it. It's not clickable. Give me 1 second. It needs the hang on. It needs the, yeah, there we go. I'll fix it. It needs the HTTP whatever. And oh, stupid Nightbot. And fixed. There we go. It doesn't have the HTTPS or whatever, so it's not a clickable link. It should be a clickable link now. I've updated Nightbot. Ripped Apparel has amazing shirts. I've got like 12 shirts to show you guys. Make sure and use that link. It supports me. Most bots can't get past. Duh. More games on Game Pass. Yay. That's not good. And Sony has the power to make a lot of third-party games exclusive. Okay. Your point? Is that market control? Is that loss lead strategy? Is that outspend strategy? What's interesting to me, right? What's interesting to me is Microsoft has so much money, and yet they can't get these companies to go exclusive to them. Do you ever wonder why? Don't you think it's interesting that they hear that Starfield is on its way to exclusivity at Sony, the same way Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo was. And what do? Well, they don't try to outbid. They could outbid Sony. Dollars to donuts, they could outbid them. They dropped $70 billion on the company. They could outbid Sony for that exclusivity. Why do you think they're not doing that? What do you think the problem is? They suck! That's the problem. It's that simple. They suck. They've been failing for 20 years. They can't throw enough money at these companies. Come be exclusive to our platform. Captain America. No, I don't think I will. They don't want to. I have a lot of things to thank. Hang on. Valiant says, do you think Microsoft has stoked the console war conversation? It's an incredibly convenient distraction. Thank you for the 20 months in a VIP. Valiant. I got to go to the fan funding page. Give me 1 second. Krayos with a $10 super chat. I've been saying this all along. It isn't Xbox versus Sony. It's Microsoft versus Sony. And when you put it that way, Microsoft wins every time on money alone. I love that you're being honest about this. Thank you so much for the $10 super chat tip. Stone Spire is going to gift one. This man's been so generous, he bumps the gifted line to 14 and a $5 tip for Newtonian. Just think about it. Consolidation apologist, a $2.46 trillion company, can't play by the same rules as two other companies that are 100th their size. You misspoke on Booty's email. He didn't say they should spend $2 to $3 billion. He said they'd be willing to lose $2 to $3 billion. Oh, sorry. It's kind of the same thing, right? They'd be spending that money and losing it, would they not? Or was he just saying we'd be better? It's a loss lead strategy. We'll lose $2 to $3 billion just to stop PlayStation. We'll lose money. We are gamers, not Sony shareholders. Why do we care about this? I care about good games. If you care about games, then you should care about this. You're making it about Sony. Why is it about Sony? Microsoft made it about Sony. Gee, I wonder why. They admitted in an email that they're the only ones that could compete with Game Pass. 5 more gifted members from Claymores, taking us to 19 members on the day. What do you mean? What do you mean we only care about Sony? If you care about games, you should be really worried that a company with Microsoft spending power is attempting to do loss lead outspend strategies. We're going to lose. They could lose money for 20 years and just shove the competition off the field. What are you talking about? This isn't even about Sony. We only have to reference Sony because Microsoft referenced Sony. It's in the emails. It's like, well, yeah, Google and Amazon, they're not even close to being where we are. We got a 2-year head start, a 10 million subscriber head start. Yeah, we can outspend Sony off the table. And you're like, well, who cares about Sony? What? You're okay with the company just outspending and getting rid of competition? That's why we have regulatory bodies. That's literally why we have this process. All these countries that just waved this through, isn't it remarkable that the FTC spends 5 days? 5! And look at all they found in 5 days. And all these other countries are like, it's fine. Yeah, Sony, after all, Sony's real big. And the FTC spends 5 days doing discovery. And it's like, Microsoft wants to outspend Sony? They want to spend them out of business? Oh, they learned that Starfield was going to be exclusive? And so they just bought the company? It took 5 days to discover this stuff. 5. No time at all. DK Beggar with another gifted membership. It's like nobody cares. It's like nobody cares. Why is chat broken? Chat looks fine to me. Thank you, DK Beggar, for gifting another membership. Slamming it home to 20. A 5-bomb would be the layup. So FTC is the real regulator? You don't think it's strange that none of these other regulatory bodies discovered any of this? You don't think that that's odd? What? CMA was against it because of cloud. You don't find that in the least bit worrying. Just imagine the FTC doesn't exist for a minute. Just imagine. And this thing was set and primed and ready to go. It was about to be approved. We wouldn't have known any of this. 5 days. Imagine 5 weeks of really looking, or 5 months. Exactly. $2 from Eddie Gonzalez. Xbox is pulling on Amazon, outspending everyone. This turned into a conspiracy episode. It's not a conspiracy. What are you talking about? I haven't said anything that's conspiratory. I'm merely stating facts. In a matter of 5 days, the FTC has uncovered emails that completely change the way you should see this deal. As a consumer, you're looking at a company the size of Microsoft, and they're saying, we can stay in this fight. All we've got to do is lose money. We can outspend and loss lead, and we can spend them out of business. And you're like, yeah, I mean, Brazil approved it. Wait, there's no conspiracy here. This is why discovery process is important. A discovery process in litigation is the foundation of due process. You uncover everything. You upturn every stone. You dig up everything you can. This is the foundation in a digital age. This is the foundation of due process. And to act as if it's totally fine that all these other governing bodies push this through, and the FTC spends 5 days in discovery and in what do you call it? Putting people on the stand. And look at all they've uncovered. Not a lawyer, so please explain to me why loss lead is unlawful. It's anti-competitive. So basically, this is something that, like Walmart would traditionally do. It would come into areas and it would build and it would sell things at a cost that they were losing money on it. But because they have so much money to spend, it doesn't matter. Imagine I go to a town and I buy up a bunch of the gas stations. And because I'm a trillionaire, I sell the gas for $1 a gallon. And I make it impossible for anybody to compete with me. I literally just lose money. And I drive all the other businesses out. And then there's no other place to buy gas. Now I'm the only gas station in town. When you do that, when you enter a market and you say, I have so much money, I can lose money for the next 20 years and I'll drive you all out of business. That's anti-competitive. That's exactly what everybody's been worried about. Walmart's anti-consumer, how are they in business? You should look at some of the documentaries on Walmart and how small towns and cities have tried to block Walmart from coming in. Because yes, Walmart's anti-competitive and anti-consumer. There's been all kind of lawsuits about how Walmart's managed their business. Do 10 minutes of research into Walmart and what they've done to local economies and what they've done to local businesses. And they do it through anti-competitive means. They do it through mass spending loss lead strategy. You really want Xbox doing that to gaming? Don't you see? You're like, that's fine. Yeah, what's the problem? You think that's fine? Why are they still in business? You're asking the wrong question. You're asking the wrong question. Why are they still in business? You're asking the wrong question, brother. The question should be, should we want more of that? Do you want more of that? There's laws prohibiting gas gouging. You can't do that. Okay, so I was just using an example of like something that you could go into a town and you could buy up something that's endemic that everybody's buying, and then you could basically undercut everybody on price. You use grocery stores, use anything as an example. It's just an analogy to show, if I'm a trillionaire, I can come to your town and I can put everybody out of business with loss lead outspend strategy. I can outspend you. You will never survive. I have trillions of dollars. You have profit margins that we're not even in the same category. Yeah, and lowering prices isn't gouging. Maybe you should Google gouging. Yeah, the gas gouger's making gas cheap. I wasn't even talking about gouging. That's capitalism. See, I love that hand wave. I love people that likely have never read a book on capitalism or economics saying that mass spending, loss lead, anti-competitive strategies is capitalism. Like, I love that hand wave. No, it's capitalism. Oh, okay. Sorry, my mistake. I'm sorry. I thought the last 100 years of law and regulatory oversight and the fact that the FTC is literally saying we got to put a stop to some of this. This mass tech consolidation's been bad for the consumer. Look at how ISPs have stalled out. Look at the cell phone industry. Like we can't do this. Yeah, have you read anything? Have you read Adam Smith? Have you read John Locke's theory of labor? Like, have you done any of that? Do you understand what you're talking about? Otavio Cruz with a $20 super chat tip. People are too young to remember that Microsoft already did this before. They outspend Netscape out of business, and Netscape was a way better browser. The outcome? We have a deal with crap Internet Explorer for years and years. Thank you for the history lesson. William Lewis with $5. Have they actually discovered this over the past 5 days, or is it they're reporting what they discovered previously during the 5-day hearing? I mean, William Lewis, that's fair. That's fair. What I'm saying is, all it took was one regulatory body combing over emails to be like, hang on a minute. Wait a minute. What's going on here? What does this email mean? What does that email mean? You're not alarmed at all that in the industry, okay, buying timed exclusivity became a standard, all right? Nobody really likes it, but it became a standard practice. Is it anti-competitive? I don't think so, because plenty of companies do this. They say, hey, we want to launch your thing first. Target will do it with Blu-rays. You've seen it with music releases traditionally, right? If you wanted to buy the latest and greatest album, Best Buy would leverage a deal and say, hey, we want to sell the album here first, right? And then you'd go there first. And then that would be the one place you could go to get that album. That's an album. Now, if Best Buy would have said, oh, we don't want to just buy an exclusivity deal on this album. We want to buy your whole frickin' record label so that no one can buy your music anywhere else. Well, that would have been incredibly disruptive and likely would have been pushed back on, right? You're the storefront and you're going out and you're buying the record label, right? Or you're going out and buying the TV company. You're edging out the competition by losing tons of money. And so, if you think about that in the grand scheme of gaming, what was happening? Play the game here first. Play the game here first. Play the game here first. They were employing a tried and true strategy. Okay. Microsoft has the power and the spending ability. They literally got in the way of a timed exclusivity by buying the fricking company. How is that not alarming? How is that not alarming? To say, well, we can't win. We can't win. Our ecosystem, we've not innovated enough. We've not saturated the market enough. We don't have enough customers. So what are we going to do? Well, we're just going to outspend you. We're just going to buy the company. Instead of brokering a deal with the company, they buy the company and they force. Look at Pete Hines' email. They just force Bethesda to make everything exclusive. Keep in mind, Pete Hines' email is incredibly damning because the CMA and the EU, when they made their conclusions, it was, oh, this will be case-by-case basis. They don't see an incentive for foreclosure strategy. Who in the frick buys that today? Do you still buy that? That they didn't see a financial incentive to do foreclosure strategy? They literally did a foreclosure strategy. As soon as they owned ZeniMax, what'd they do? Indiana Jones? Amend that deal with Disney. What's that? Starfield? No. Redfall? No. To the point that Pete Hines was like, we were not asked to do this. You told us to do this. I'm trying to read everybody's comments. Booty states that starting a new streaming service at scale is impossible, that content is the moat, that Sony is the only one that can compete with Game Pass. No mention of Nintendo. That's exactly right, Brap. Like, the idea that, oh, yeah, you're trying to protect Sony. Literally, Xbox sees Sony as their only obstacle. They're like, yeah, they're the only ones that could really compete with us, and we can outspend them. And what do they do in the years that follow? They outspend them. In 2017, Xbox had 6 studios. 4 years later, they had 23. In 4 years' time. That fast. And now they want to buy what? ABK's got how many studios? 12? So they want to bolster up to 35? I don't even know the total count. I really don't. I don't know the total count over there at ABK. It's that big. They were literally willing to spend $7 billion to stop a timed exclusivity deal. That's the power that Microsoft has with respect to spending. Butters says, look at Adobe. I can't even own their software anymore. I need to pay a monthly or yearly sub just to have the right to use it. Is that what people want? Yeah, like, Microsoft edges out. They edge out browsers. They edge out operating systems. Microsoft edges everybody out through loss lead strategy, through aggressive strategy. And now what? If you want Microsoft Office, they're trying to shove everybody to subscription. They're going to do the same thing with Game Pass. Don't you understand? Through loss lead market dominance, what they'll do is their aim is to own way more than everybody else. And then if you want it, you got to subscribe. Sorry. Ben says, asking because I don't know enough, is there any sign of a side winning this case at the moment, or is it still pretty back and forth? Here's the thing. It's pretty back and forth. Can we talk about Mixer? That was pretty funny. Yeah, they quadrupled their studio count, and where are the games? Creature says, look at Office, browsers, and Windows. You really want that in gaming? You want the company that pulled that off to be doing that to gaming. Nobody has seen the forest for the trees because we've all been focused on Call of Duty. To be honest, we've focused on Sony, and it's like, Sony is an obstacle. Sony is an obstacle to Microsoft's ultimate strategy of, we're going to loss lead our way to dominance here. Nobody will be able to withstand us. We can just outspend them all. If you give them ABK, why do you think that Phil Spencer said that Activision is an accelerant to their strategy? Why do you think he said that? He's like, they're not our strategy. They're an accelerant to our strategy. And then he also says in a question, is this model about growing console? And he says no. He basically says that this model is about growing mobile cloud in the ecosystem. This model that they're doing, this deal, is not about expanding consoles. Why do you think they deprioritize the Series X and they prioritize the Series S? Confirmation now, they allocated more production to cloud than the Series X. That's now a matter of public record. I tried to tell y'all that months ago when we read through Jez Corden's article. I was like, nobody sees what's happening. Everybody's looking at the surface and they're like, oh yeah, Microsoft just keeps failing. Microsoft's this, that, and the third with the Xbox Series X. And it's like, their goal is so much bigger than oh yeah, we got to try to out console Sony. When Phil Spencer said that, he wasn't like really being like this fed up, we've lost, we can't make it. He was telling you how it is. We're not going to out console them. So what are we going to do? Funny that he said out console, almost as if the phrase outspend is just kind of baked into the strategy. We're not going to out console Sony. According to Matt Booty, we're going to outspend them. Biggity with 5 months. All of Microsoft's acquisitions were because they heard all they heard was Xbox has no games. What about now? Well, right. And Phil Spencer's like, every time we ship a game on Sony. Every time you ship a game on Sony? What games are those, Phil? Minecraft? Bethesda titles? Let me ask you something. How'd you find those? Did you just find those games on the side of the road and take them home with you? No, you bought them. The only reason that you can say when we ship games to PlayStation is because you acquired those games. It's frightening, says Cliffo. Get all these studios, put them in their ecosystem, and then just raise the price tenfold, and we can't do anything about it because it's either pay or you won't have access. Yeah, if you can't beat them, buy them. Hang on. What was this thing that you tried to put in here, Eugene? In the Discord. The difference between spending $2 to $3 billion and losing $2 to $3 billion is that they could be willing to spend $10 billion, knowing they would lose $2 to $3 billion of it. Bethesda could be a loss for them, and they wouldn't care under that sort of strategy. Do you guys understand what he just said? They literally could have bought Bethesda and are currently operating under that deal at a loss. Because that's not the strategy. The strategy is not buy these companies to make money from them. The strategy is, I was wrong. I thought the strategy was buy up as much as you can and treat it like software and distribute it everywhere. I don't think that's the strategy anymore. That's what I thought. I think I was like peeling at the tip of the iceberg. It's not about having a software mentality. It's about loss lead market control strategy. We're just going to spend as much as we possibly can. No one can compete with us in this regard. If they get a hold of Activision Blizzard, that'll sort of be the beginning of the end, because it's not about, oh, we need to protect Sony. Sony's going to go out of business. It's about that level of market control will quite literally be bad for the consumer. You'll have less choice. You'll probably end up spending more. They'll shutter a bunch of the studios because under a loss lead strategy, they're not worried about the property. They're worried about keeping it from the other guy. How will they make their money back on Redfall and Starfield? They can't. They might make it back on Starfield in 5 to 6 years. Show me any evidence that Game Pass is stopping you from buying games regularly. Show me any game that is Game Pass only. No individual purchase options. You don't have to buy Game Pass anywhere. Nobody's saying that, Gilly. That's not the issue. The issue would be in 15 years when they slowly gobble up as much as they possibly can, and the games are only on Game Pass. Don't you see that's the strategy? The strategy is you can control the market, you can control gaming by loss lead acquisition. Microsoft can lose money for the next 20 years. Light roast is currently in process. You're better off just trying to dark roast, brother. You're going to have to wait a long time for light roast. I hate to tell you that, but the truth is, this is not a very strong dark roast. On the dark roast spectrum, this is on the lower end. If you're not a fan of dark roast, you should probably just try a bag. I think you would like it. It still has the balanced acidity. It is still very, very smooth. We've had a lot of people do that. And if you guys like my shirt today, my son asked me to wear this because he has a Spider-Man Venom shirt on today. We are officially now an affiliate. Down here at the bottom, it's like a versus thing, like a Street Fighter thing, like a Street Fighter versus Capcom. We are now an affiliate with Ripped. So you can go to bit.ly/Reforge Ripped. The link is in chat if you use the shirt command, and that'll support me. Their shirts are very, very well priced. $14, I think, for a lot of them. The other thing you have to consider, Gilly, is what Hotshot is saying. Game Pass, the subscription where you don't own anything. They don't care about ROI on Starfield, says Hilly. They just don't want Sony to have revenue on that title and as any other games that they can get a hold of. I really don't think people see that. They don't see how crazy that is that happened. I thought that was a bigger smoking gun than Matt Booty's email. I really, truly do. I thought that was a bigger smoking gun. You have no evidence to show that games will be pulled from stores and be Game Pass exclusives. That's all unfounded fear. No, it's not unfounded fear, Hilly. It's not. It's demonstrable in the market right now. Adobe has done it with Creative Suite. Many software companies are moving toward this. There's video editing software today that you can't buy anymore. They make you sub. You're not paying attention to the software market if you don't think there's evidence of a trajectory of submodel taking over. It's taking over visual entertainment. It's taking over music. It's taking over software. You think games are immune to that business impetus? One that Microsoft is clearly driving with Office 365 and with their own Game Pass model? Gilly, with all due respect, you're asleep if you don't see that pattern. It's everywhere. It's what every company is moving toward. The other day, I wanted to go get video editing software. Subscription. X number of dollars a month. I just want to buy your software. It's not an option anymore. Everyone's moving away from that. And it'll come for gaming. It happened to your TV shows. The danger there, too, as Disney is learning, it's very, very hard to make profit on that. Rumors are they're going to sell Star Wars. Ika Gang with a 14 spot. Dogfight out there. No one cares about consumer. A 2 spot from Edward. I'm concerned for the gaming industry's future. And Microsoft can be disruptive in all the wrong ways, man. Where's the disruption with innovation? Where's the disruption with creation? This is disruption through acquisition. T-Bone with 14 months, it's VIP plus. People don't understand the difference between paying a company as a third party versus buying that company. Sony went after exclusives, but instead of Microsoft doing the same, they bought the entire company. Thank you, T-Bone. I was just trying to make that point. It's like that was a bigger smoking gun than Booty's email. When Microsoft admitted, yeah, we heard Sony was going to broker another exclusive deal, so we just bought the company. Huh? A tweet just today from Tom Warren. Microsoft wants to move Windows fully to the cloud. We've heard about Windows 365 on the business side, but a new internal presentation from Microsoft shows that the company has the same ambitions on the consumer side. Gilly, it's Microsoft's strategy, brother. They're going to put everything on the cloud because then they control it, and then you don't own it. And that's the only place you can get it. I'm telling you, the problem with this is the same today as it's always been. People don't see Microsoft. They see Xbox. It's like all they see is green. The green light. Bleed green, baby. Look at Microsoft. This isn't about Xbox. It's never been about Xbox. It's the Xbox in the Xbox Activision deal. Xbox is the red herring. It's never been about Xbox. It's always been about Microsoft and how they edge out into markets. Loss lead, massive spending. That's how they do it. I have a spot in my back that's just like waiting to crack. It's about gaming. It'll be disruptive to gaming. That's what nobody seems to understand. See, the reason that so many of the podcasts and the pundits and the commentators on Twitter, let me tell you why they talk about this in fandom language. Because they're not equipped to enter the discussion in any other way. That's all they got. That's all they got. They drag an Xbox drum into the room. Thoom, 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 thoom. Yeah, Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond. They're smoking the FTC. Game Pass, baby. They're not equipped to enter the discussion any other way. If they historically look at what mass spending, loss-leading, anti-competitive acquisitions have led to, if they look at that, the evidence is clear. This is terrible. If they look at Microsoft, if they look at the history of Microsoft and their dominance and how they got to where they are, If they look at that, no way. You can't defend this. You can't. You're going to look at this and consider that this could be bad for me as a consumer. You have one way of talking about this. I'll look and pull quotes and emails and be like, look at what Microsoft is saying. Look at what they're planning on doing. And you'll just call me a pony because it's like you don't have the ability to enter the landscape of the discussion. You can just hurl an insult. That's all you got. That's all you got in your arsenal. No sense in a logical fallacy? What's the logical fallacy? What logical fallacy have I employed? I would love to hear which one. Everest Thrawn with a 10 spot. The exclusivity of apps in cloud is already an issue. Companies are forced into multi-cloud by default. Consumption models for hybrid cloud have to be produced by third parties to reduce sub-costs. Well, and this is something that I think this gets lost as well, because people look at the CMA and they say, well, the cloud's not even there. And it's like, that's literally the point. CMA literally said that. They conceded that the cloud market and the cloud ecosystem needs to develop, and they don't want it to develop under mass oversight. They think that market impacts would be better. It would be healthier. So even in their own block, the CMA said, yeah, cloud's not established yet. So when you're like, but cloud's not established yet, they're like, yeah, we just said that. Because you say it and a bunch of Sony fans hop on it and twist it so you get mixed up with them. I disagree with Lono sometimes, but today he is 100% right. I just read through emails and quotations, and then I spent maybe 5 minutes telling you what I think. Like, I don't know how anybody can look at any of the revelations the last 5 days and be like, oh no, this is good for the market. We should let Microsoft do this. The fact is, they don't care, says Ghost in the Garage Gaming. They're so entrenched in the tribalism, that's all they have. Lono tries to be objective. You people calling him a pony can't go 12 rounds. Yeah. It's not a theory, it's pure speculation and worry. Okay, James, the crux of my argument has been, look at what Microsoft has said and what they have done. You want to go down to my idea that they're trying to consolidate the market so they can put it all behind a subscription fee and a subscription model, because that's where the software industry, the music industry, the TV industry, the movie industry, every digital entertainment, every digital avenue, every software avenue has gone that way. And I think Microsoft has similar plans for gaming. And you're like, that's pure speculation theory. If you don't think there's a natural logical flow there, that's your own fault, but that's not even the crux of my argument. So take that, I think, pretty well articulated, logical trajectory of tech and where everything's headed. Just set that to the side because you think it's speculation and is therefore a fallacy. Speculation's not a fallacy, by the way, but okay. And look at everything else we've said today. Look at everything else we've said. Matt Booty basically admitting we can outspend Sony. We're totally good. It's better for us to lose money to edge them out. They're our only real competitor to Game Pass, and we have a head start. And then if you look at what Phil Spencer said with respect to, this strategy and this thing that we're doing, this deal, this is not about growing console. It's about the ecosystem. You already don't own games. That ship sailed 10 years ago. If the Xbox server shut down, Sony server shut down, and games like Diablo 4 go offline, developers are doing it on purpose. That's superfluous to the discussion. That's neither here nor there about lost lead, massive spending, and outspending your competitor. That has nothing to do with conversation. Like, that's a hand wave. Oh, yeah, everybody's doing that. Oh, okay. This is fine because, what did we say earlier? Oh, it's fine because Walmart's still in business. Like, just the sheer lack of awareness to see the irony of that statement. Well, that's fine because Walmart's still around. What? Drufus with a 5 spot. You'll own nothing and be happy. If you don't own something physically, you don't actually own it anymore. Welcome to the future. Edward Hulse. The regulators who pass this, like the EU, seriously need to restructure their internal operations. Thank you guys for the 5 spots. By the way, Gilly, I'm going to push back on your false equivalency because it's pretty glaring. There is a chasm of difference between not owning games on Game Pass because it's a subscription model and the idea that one day servers may go down and I won't be able to play my games. That's a false equivalency. Those are not equal. If I subscribed to Netflix and things rotate in and out of Netflix, I don't own them. If I buy a movie on Amazon Prime, they're not equal. Well, you don't actually own it because if Amazon ever shuts down, you can't watch that movie. Okay, that's a false equivalency because you're not comparing things that are equal. A subscription model that by design you don't own and things come and go from it voluntarily on rhythm is not the same as the hypothetical server crash of the future when nothing is running and working and we're all eating off the land. Like, you talk about, you just dismiss the idea that one day Microsoft might put everything behind Game Pass so you can't buy it. And then you're literally running to, well, you don't really own the game, you just own the license, and hypothetically one day all the servers may go down. You're literally employing a worse slippery slope argument, fallacy. I'm not even using a slippery slope fallacy. I'm saying there's a measurable trajectory in the industry with music, TV shows, movies, and software. They're all moving towards cloud and subscription. They're all doing it. And Microsoft has literally said, this deal we're trying to do is not about growing console. It's about the ecosystem in the cloud and mobile. You don't own them because the online DRM means you cannot play them offline without some service. Who the service is doesn't change the fact you don't own it. And you're again just employing a false equivalency. That has nothing to do with the discussion about going to submodel, Gilly. It doesn't. They're not equal. Melrose with the 29 months and it's a VIP. Thank you so much for coming back in. They're not equal, Gilly. Buying a game digitally and owning a license is a legal transaction of ownership. I own that license. Now, sure, they can revoke that license for whatever they see fit, or they could shut the servers down, or whatever the heck may be, like, oh, the internet's down or whatever. That is not equal to companies moving their video editing software, access to movies and TV shows, and access to Microsoft Office. Windows is moving to the cloud, apparently, according to internal documents. That all going to cloud and subscription service. That is not the same as digital licensure. They're completely different. They're not the same at all. Because in one, I can buy that game and they have to go through legal ramifications to just break that license or just to shut it down. They could get in really big trouble because there's consumer protection laws in place that would not enable them to just do that. Yeah, let's imagine some post-apocalyptic event that would devastate the internet and then I can't own my game or whatever. That's not the same as a company putting everything behind the subscription fee. Why? Because I bought Ghost of Tsushima once. A subscription fee, I got to pay that every month. I got to pay that every year. And guess what happens? The next 6 months, there's not a lot of games coming out that I want. I don't want to pay for this sub-service right now. Sorry, you don't get access to anything then. It's all gone. It's all gone. You don't have access to it. Oh, well, maybe our contract deal ended with that company. That's not on the service anymore. That's been one of the frustrations with the television subscription services, is the content just keeps shifting around and moving around. I have and I love all three platforms, but as an Xbox-centric gamer, Lono is absolutely on the money today. The creepily obsessive defense of Microsoft after what's been revealed is sad. I appreciate the fact that there are folks who really like Xbox that are like, yo, I don't think this deal's a good idea. These emails are pretty telling. This is not about buying up a bunch of games so that you can compete and have Game Pass be full. you're trying to outspend your competitor through loss lead strategy, through anti-competitive means. Like that, we can't let that happen. Rage with 5 months says, love your content, keep up the great work. What I said is the end game right here. Butters. There was one true ending to all of this, Stadia. It was too early, but that is the final plan that Microsoft wants you to do. They want you to buy a sub to use their virtual console and then have to sub to Game Pass or buy games on that service as well. Again, owning nothing. That's the true end game. You still think you own that game? Or was it just a license to access it? The license is a binding contract, though, between me and the company. How many games right now have you suddenly lost access to because the company was like, yeah, we're just going to revoke your license? That game's gone. Now, sure, online games are in their own category. If the servers go down, you can't use that as an example because that's a new game type. In the evolution of gaming, a game where everything lives on a server and there's open worlds and dedicated servers and all of that's there, if they shut those servers down, you can't use that as an example because that's completely different. That's literally a unique game type that's evolved within the landscape of gaming. I own a license to play Ghost of Tsushima. I own that license. That's mine. It's attached to my account. The only way that license is revoked is through a breach of the license. They'd have to ban me or whatever from playing the game or revoke the license. There's no evidence of companies doing that right now. There's no evidence of them even wanting to. Why would they want to do that? Now, if the service goes down, sure. But again, you're talking about something catastrophic. You're talking about something catastrophic, like Sony just goes under and I lose access to all my games. DK Beggar with another gifted member. We're not talking about a hypothetical catastrophic. We are talking about a business strategy that's being employed by software companies, digital entertainment companies, and you're seeing it trickle into gaming. You think it's a coincidence that Microsoft, of all companies, is the one driving the Game Pass strategy, the day-and-date strategy? You think it's a sheer coincidence that that's what's going on? Stadia, that was a catastrophic event. They went under. You just proved my point. If something like that happens, this is so painful. That is not equal to what Xbox is trying to do. You're smarter than that. You're smarter than that. You know that's not the same. If a company goes belly up and you lose access to the game or the servers, that is not equal to what Microsoft's trying to do with Xbox and Game Pass and what subscription model is bringing to software. You're not paying attention. You aren't. You're not. Your eyes are shut. Those are not equal. You want to hand wave that? Well, I mean, if the servers go down and something catastrophic happens, I mean, with like Stadia, we lose access to all the games. So who really cares if Microsoft suddenly silos up entire portions of the industry into a submodel, and then we're forced to use that submodel, and they outspend their competitors. So we slowly lose, games and studios and developers, and we just have to go to Microsoft for everything. I mean, what's the big deal? You don't really own your games right now anyway. It's just a hand wave and more hand waving about, well, you just have a license, and the license could be your own. You're not paying attention. You're not. Something catastrophic happening and servers going down or games shutting down this is a business strategy. Matt Booty outlined it in an email. He outlined it in an email. We can outspend Sony. We can spend them out of business. Amazon and Google. Did you hear the way he talked about Amazon and Google? They're not even a threat to us. Imagine trying to spin up a subscription model right now. Yeah, we got a 2-year head start. We got 10 million subs. You can't catch us. And what's he say? The only really competitor is Sony. They're the only real competitor. And you think a false equivalency to, well, you don't really own games. I mean, you just pay for the license. That's a misquote. He didn't say that. Nice fake news. He didn't say we can spend Sony out of business. He didn't say that. What part did he not say? I didn't say the word quote, and I clearly wasn't directly reading it. Paraphrasing is allowed. You understand news reporting, right? You can paraphrase a direct quote. What part did he not say? Which one? Which part? Where's the lie? They could close down xCloud because they still let you download the game? No, but that's not if they... We're not talking about that, Paul. You're talking to F the Cat. Sorry, F the Cat said Xbox could shut down xCloud tomorrow and get away with it because it has the beta tag. He said that some might believe they are doing that, but it is not his belief. That wasn't contained in the email. That's not true. That's not true. I can pull up the email and show you. That's not what he said. He didn't say some might believe that. He said we, Microsoft, are in a very unique position to be able to spend Sony out of business. He didn't say, well, some people might believe we could do this. He's literally saying we're in a unique position. We can do that. We can outspend them. He literally says we could lose $2 to $3 million and it would be worth it to keep them from becoming the Disney of gaming. Read the quote. I read the quote multiple times. He never says that people believe this about us. Who told you that? What podcast told you that? He didn't say that about those old emails. I love that. That's my favorite. That's my favorite. You understand the fact that the timeline of the emails is damning, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say million? Yeah, it's billion. Yeah, he said we could lose 2 to 3 billion and it would be worth it. Loss lead. We'll lose a ton of money to keep Sony from becoming the Disney of gaming. We will lose money to put a stop to that. You understand the timeline of the emails. That's remarkable to me. That people think, well, that was in 2019. So you think in 2019, Matt Booty writes an article about spending Sony out of business, and then he talks about the real battle is content. The real battle is having a catalog. And he says that Google and Amazon aren't even a threat. The only competitor is Sony to our Game Pass model. We have a 2-year head start and 10 million subscribers. We have a head start. Sony's the only real competitor. You think he says all that, and then the very next year, they've got Bethesda, and the very next year, they go out and try and buy Activision Blizzard, and you're like, no, that email's irrelevant. What? He literally laid out the strategy. He literally laid out the strategy. Amazon and Google aren't a threat to Game Pass. PlayStation is. Combine what he said with what Phil Spencer said. A different view to the general view below might be that we, Microsoft, are in a very unique position to be able to go spend Sony out of business. Oh, okay, but that's not what you originally said. You said some people believe this. I'm going to literally pull up the image. The idea that part of the sentence you think gets him out from underneath of it? Open image in a new tab. Go full screen. Hang on, I got the wrong cap zoom on. Let me zoom out one. A lot to digest here. We'll read in detail. A different view to the general view below might be that we, Microsoft, are in a very unique position to be able to go spend Sony out of business. He's proposing this. You're acting like this right here. A different view to the general view below. What that gets you? That what does that nullify the entire email? He's just dorking around, guys. Matt Booty's just joshing, right? He's just goofing with Tim Stewart. He's just goofing around with Tim Stewart. He's just having a, what if we did this? That's not what this email is. Look what he says. If we think that video game content matters in 10 years, we might look back and say, totally would have been worth it to lose, not spend, lose 2 or 3 billion in 2020 to avoid a situation where Tencent, Google, Amazon, or even Sony have become the Disney of games. Now, consider something here. He says, hypothetically, we're willing to lose to avoid these people getting to a dominant position. And then what does he transition to? Who's Tim Stewart? He's the CFO. What does he transition to? For example, it's practically impossible for anybody to start a new video streaming service at scale at this point. What content do you base it on? Things like Hulu and CBS, All Access, will be trivial players in the space, right? He's talking, the big streaming platforms are all that matters. It's almost impossible for anybody to spin up. And then he transitions to games. Okay, he's telling you how they view the market and what their strategy is going to be. He's telling you right here. In games, Google is 3 to 4 years away from being able to have a studio up and running. Amazon has shown no ability to execute on game content. What's he conclude? Content is the one moat that we have in terms of a catalog that runs on current devices and capability to create new. Sony is really the only other player who could compete with Game Pass, and we have a 2-year and a 10 million sub lead. A different view to the general, read the top line. I cannot believe you guys think that invalidates everything in the email. Like, that's embarrassing that you think that. I'm embarrassed for you. Truly embarrassed. That you think the opening line invalidates all the logic of the email. It's a very logical progression that he goes through. It's like, we could spend them out of business. Like, we might say in a couple of years, we should have been losing money to prevent them from becoming the Disney. And then what's he do? He says, well, Google and Amazon aren't going to do it. Google and Amazon aren't going to do it. The only company that's a competitor for Game Pass is Sony. And then what did they do in the following year? What do they do? Phil Spencer admits, yeah, we got wind that Starfield was going to be an exclusive, so we bought Bethesda. They put it into practice. They literally said, that's a threat to us. We can't outbid them for the first party for the time exclusivity. Get them. I missed a gifted member. Hang on a minute. Didn't I? DK Baker gifted another one, taking us to 22 members on the day. Get this thing to 25. Slam it home to 50 if you feel like it. Let's see if any of the big boys are in chat today. Did you see who he left out of that list? Oh, like he left out Tencent, you mean? Ryan says, good. Why should PlayStation get to buy third-party exclusives? Because everybody's like, that was literally the standard in the industry that Microsoft started. Microsoft started that idea of like, oh yeah, we can buy up timed exclusivity. It's the epitome of monopolistic strategies or practices. You want Sony to be the market leader. Sony paid for exclusive gaming deals to kill Xbox out of the market. No. That strategy was put in place in the previous generations. That you guys have got to go back in time. You're forgetting. Listen. This was put into place long before this started with Sony and Starfield. Historically speaking, if you go back to the 360 era, you could probably even go back to like Nintendo, when Nintendo actually lost a lot of their third-party relationships because they were too controlling. You can go way back. And the disruption of Nintendo's dominance was like they were way too controlling over third-party relationships. They actually lost a lot of those third-party relationships. So if you look at the history of third-party exclusivity deals and time exclusivity deals, this wasn't something that Sony was like, yeah, let's just start doing that all of a sudden. It's been going on for a very long time. Xbox did this with Call of Duty for years. Do you forget that era? During the 360 era, there was tons of exclusivity deals. And one of the main ones that put Xbox in a good position was Call of Duty. So to suddenly take issues, like to take an issue with third-party exclusivity, that's the market. That's been the market since the 360 era. Do I like it? No. I didn't like it when it happened to Tomb Raider. I didn't like it when Hogwarts had limited stuff that you could only get on the PlayStation 5. I thought it was stupid. I'm like, what are we doing here? Yeah, Call of Duty and GTA, of all games. Paying for timed exclusivity? Like, look at what Eugene just put in chat. Halo, Gears, KOTOR, Call of Duty, Xbox is built on buying exclusives. Like, seriously, think about what Xbox has bought over the years. GTA 4 was timed on Xbox. Call of Duty, some of the biggest titles, some of the biggest history of big third-party exclusivity deals was all started by Xbox. So Sony's doing the exact same thing that the market's been doing since the 360 era, and you're like, yeah, well, that justifies buying entire companies as a response. Wait, I'm sorry. What? Wait, that's not at all the same? Time exclusivity strategy has been around for over a decade. Sony dominated in this strategy, so Microsoft switched course. Doesn't mean it's right, but it allowed them to compete again. Well, but here's the problem, Gale. Just think as a gamer for just a second. Just think as a gamer. So, did Microsoft compete with Bethesda? Or did they literally burn something to the ground in order to make sure Sony couldn't have it? I'm not saying Starfield's burned to the ground, but Redfall, it would be amazing if Doctor Strange was real. I would love to see a future where Redfall was a timed exclusive on PlayStation. I would be very curious if it would have ever made it to market. If like Sony would have looked at the project and been like, kill it. Because they love to cancel projects. There was an interview recently about that, right? So I'm very curious as to what would have happened to Redfall. We need Doctor Strange to like entertain all the possible timelines back then, because I would be very curious, because Sony seems happy to look at a project and be like, this is crap, don't launch this. But with the Starfield situation, it's like, well, hang on a minute, that game, according to Pete Hines, they were told no more. So we don't know what that did to production. We don't know what that did to the game. So if you're going to sit here and pretend that that's not disruptive to quality and value and what gamers receive, I can't look at that and see it any other way, as that wasn't good for gamers that happened. It wasn't. That's the point that I'm making, is that if you look at this as a gamer, you don't want that happening to games and projects. Imagine right now that some big company with tons of money swoops in and buys a studio. Let's say the studio working on Fable, right? I wouldn't want that. I don't want a game that's in production to suddenly be purchased and suddenly be moved and have its trajectory change. That's not good for the project, the quality. It's clear from Pete Hines' email, he wasn't happy about this. I tried to say back when I looked, like, it's so funny. It's really, really comical how all of my observations about Pete Hines in that interview where he said it wasn't his call, my observations about the blog post that Todd Howard put out. Todd Howard put out that blog post and said, like our original deal, this is not about one system. I don't think Todd Howard, I don't think Pete Hines, I don't think any of them knew. I don't think any of them knew that, yeah, they're going to make everything go to one system. I don't think they knew it. I think they were surprised by it. I think they were unhappy about it. Pete Hines is delivering things up on a silver platter right now. This is not the way forward for the market. He was confused about messaging. You're right, Amos. You're right. He said, we were asked, parentheses, told. You're right. Yeah, he was thrilled. Every single outlet, whether they're pro Xbox or pro Sony or somewhere in the middle, nobody, and I mean nobody, has read Pete Hines' email and has come to a different conclusion. He is unhappy. He's like, what the frick is going on here? You guys bought us, told us to make everything exclusive, and now you're out here saying, well, we want to ensure Sony fans can continue to enjoy Call of Duty. What the frick's the messaging here? If he's so unhappy he can bounce, that would be really good for the industry. That's right. Yeah, to lose Pete Hines at Bethesda, that'd be such a good thing for that. That'd be another great casualty of Call of Duty, of Microsoft's content war. I also don't want games to be a timed exclusive to a single platform. Xbox exclusive comes to PC, Sony ones do not. Sony's strategy is worse for games. They release games to less platforms. That is just fanboy talking points, Gilly. That's fanboy talking points. What's it matter if the games launch and they're crap? I'll take a timed exclusive Deathloop and Ghostwire over Redfall any day. That's just fanboy talking points. Well, it lands in more places, ergo Sony's worse for gaming. I'm sorry, what? So you've created an arbitrary standard that if games land in more places, that's better for gamers? I thought the quality of the product is what mattered most. 5 gifted members from Ginger. My man Ginger Prime. We went over there and checked out his Final Fantasy 16 video the other day. If you guys want Final Fantasy coverage, he's the man for it. You guys know me. I dabble, and I move on. Like, presuming that's literally a marketing talking point from Microsoft. Oh, we put games in more places. Well, who the heck cares if it's not optimized well? Buy a PlayStation 5 and be quiet. No one's stopping you from buying a PlayStation 5. Would I rather have to buy a new box so that I can play all the games? Or would I rather have a company silo everything up, put everything under their umbrella? Oh, but it lands on PC and Xbox now. Okay, does that net me more value as a consumer? I don't know. Are the games worth it? Are they of high quality? Are they of high caliber? How are games that come to less platforms better for more gamers? You're arguing from quantity. I'm arguing from quality. You're arguing quantity. I'm not arguing quantity. I'm arguing quality. Because that's better value transmission. In 2017, Microsoft had 6 studios. 4 years later, they have 23 studios. Where's all that quality and value, brother? Where is it? Where are all those games? What's going on over there? They have more studios from Sony. Let me ask you something. Deathloop and Ghostwire eventually came to Xbox. Was there anything wrong with that? Was there anything wrong with the way that played out? Oh, you had to wait a year. Oh, that's bad for the consumer. They had to wait a year. Why is that an assumed negative? Why is that an assumed, oh, that's worse for gamers? You had to wait a year? I don't understand why that's a presumed negative. I would much rather have quality over quantity. You could probably even argue that timed exclusivity allows them to build a game for one platform, optimize it, make sure it's crisp and ready to go, and then in the year that follows, optimize and work on the port for wherever it goes next. You could probably make a pragmatic argument about that actually being good for games and good for gamers. How many multiplats have come out that have been absolute trash so far? They run like garbage. Like, multiplats haven't been that impressive lately. Funny enough, Deathloop landed, got a bunch of awards, ran fine. Ghostwire landed, got a bunch of awards, ran fine. Came to Xbox a year later. I don't think Deathloop had any problems. I mean, Ghostwire had some. I believe those issues have been fixed. He's not serious, right? What? That your presumptions might be unfounded and based purely on the assumption that if a game lands everywhere, that's better? Why are you entitled to that? Do you think if TV shows landed everywhere, they would be better? Do you think Disney would invest? Do you think Netflix would have invested as much money in their first-party shows if they were putting them everywhere and not recouping them as much cost on them? Do you think that leads to better products or worse products? It's weird for people to look at a trajectory within the market of multiplat struggling, developers openly stating it actually helps us to shrink down to one platform. You know, it's hilarious to see people defending Xbox when Xbox has developers on record right now saying, yeah, when we shrink to one platform, it makes development a whole lot better. And you couldn't see that timed exclusivity could actually lead to a better product because they can shrink down focus, get the game as polished as possible for one platform, make a bunch of money. They also were paid for the timed exclusivity. And now they have a year to port and polish it to other platforms. You couldn't see a reality where that's better than multiplats that launch and are buggy and bad everywhere, that hit the market clearly before they're ready. Jedi Survivor. Sony PC ports have been mostly trash, demonstrably false and untrue. Very little evidence late-term ports to be good for those games at launch. Gilly, I'm shocked that you're in here saying the things that you're saying today. I'm disappointed. Sony PC ports have been mostly trash? Where'd you hear that? From an Xbox podcast or Digital Foundry? Where did you hear that? They've been mostly trash? The Last of Us PC port was garbage. It was done by Iron Galaxy. And then Horizon Zero Dawn was rough, and it's since been patched and mostly ironed out. Days Gone, totally fine. God of War, totally fine. Returnal, totally fine. Rock solid ports, highly praised. Why are you just like parroting Xbox talking points? Well, most of the PC ports have been trash. Trash? Really? Spider-Man Remastered and Miles Morales are trash on PC? What Xbox podcast Kool-Aid have you been guzzling? What are you even talking about? Mathematically false. You are objectively wrong. You're objectively wrong. Mathematically, the ports that have come from Sony have been excellent. You had the Last of Us PC port, which was arguably embarrassing for Sony. Why'd you put Iron Galaxy in charge of that? I'll never know. Horizon Zero Dawn could never be described as trash. It was rough and had some issues, but you'd never describe it as trash. I don't watch Xbox podcasts, just you. Well, then what are you saying that for then? Where did you get the impression from me or any outlets at all that most of the PlayStation ports have been trash? Now you're arguing that it's good for gamers for Sony to pay third parties to keep games off Xbox and PC. You think in such simplistic ways. If you remove platform allegiance, Ryan, you could argue from a pure pragmatic sense that game value and quality goes up when it lands on one platform first. If I'm wrong, so be it, but all my experience, those ports were rough and needed months to fix. I don't know what ports you're talking about, Gilly. None of those ports with The Last of Us Part 1 I'll never defend. It was trash. It was an embarrassment. They rushed it out because of the TV show. Instead of using Nixus, they used Iron Galaxy. And apparently Naughty Dog also helped. We don't even have a... Naughty Dog's blog was an embarrassment. Zero ownership, zero transparency. We don't know what the frick happened with that PC port. But the rest of the PC ports were totally fine. They were well reviewed and broken down. They were excellent. Iron Galaxy didn't touch that. It was all Naughty Dog. That's not true, Mo. That was all Naughty Dog. That's false. You're just saying something that isn't true. Iron Galaxy was hired and was a part of it. They were mentioned in multiple articles about this. We don't know to what degree because there's been a lack of transparency, but to say Iron Galaxy never touched it is just a flat out lie. That's not true. The idea that a game could come out at a higher quality, the idea that a game could come out at a higher quality by not being multi-platform. Why are you entitled to a game being multi-platform? Why is that a presumed entitlement and an assumption that that's a good for the market? Why do you presume and assume that? Argue for it. The presupposition that you have coming to the argument is that's bad for gamers. Why? Well, because less people can play it. Oh, okay, you haven't explained why that's bad for gamers. Amazon scoops up a TV show or a movie and they procure timed release exclusivity. Is that bad for consumers? Why? Well, we have to go to them and give them money and use their platform. Oh, okay. Isn't that what Microsoft's trying to do? So you're okay when your brand does it. But it's bad for the consumer when the other brand does it. Okay. I understand. It's bad when Sony does it, but it's totally fine when Xbox does it. So is timed exclusivity a universal negative for the consumer? If it's a universal negative, then they're both doing something bad for the market. And now we're at a standstill. Microsoft is not paying for timed exclusivity. Microsoft is outspending their competitor to control the market. The fact that you can't see the difference between the two is remarkable. Oh, like, you're basically saying it's really, really bad that guy over there yells at his kids. But then you're going to ignore the guy over here that's doing far worse. It's like, yeah, that's really bad that Sony pays for timed exclusivity. So it's totally fine for Microsoft to do mass consolidation. Wait. Hold on a minute. You just brazenly contradicted yourself. If it's wrong for Sony to pay for timed exclusivity, wouldn't mass consolidation be like, I don't know, way worse? It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting that it's a problem when a company will pay for timed exclusivity, so you get it a year later. That's just unconscionable. But it's fine for Microsoft to do mass consolidation that completely silos the content to their ecosystem. That's totally fine. You're literally arguing that that's bad, so let us do something way worse. Yeah, I should be able to murder my wife because that guy gets away with beating his. I have some fan funding to thank. Hang on. Wait, did I thank DK Bager for his gifted? I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to bump the gifted to 28. We're on our way to 50. William Lewis with a $5 super chat. To help justify your point, at the hearing set up front, if they had to develop for PlayStation as well as Xbox, Starfield wouldn't be coming out in September. Did you hear that? Can you conceive of a reality where a game coming to one system first increases its quality and helps it come to the market faster? Why is that not a good for the market? So Deathloop and Ghostwire, according to that logic, they likely came to the market more polished and faster because of timed exclusivity. But it's a presumed and assumed negative because less people got to play it. Your presuppositions are showing. $2 from T-Bone. Are they forgetting Nintendo exclusivity? They never mention Nintendo for whatever reason. Well, they rarely mention Nintendo for whatever reason. You can't see that. It's like you come to the conversation with all these presuppositions and assumptions that, well, time exclusivity? Yeah, that's bad. Sony shouldn't do that. Why? I don't understand. And if that's so bad, why are you okay with Microsoft doing something that is way more economically and culturally and ecosystem disruptive? That's economically disruptive for them to do this. It's not buying a timed exclusive, so then you got to wait a year. Even if Sony could afford Activision, I'd be against that too. No one should own that much gaming. Listen, we've talked about this before. The buying war is coming if this gets approved. You think Embracer Group just freed up funds and downsized and laid people off? You think that's a coincidence? You think it's a coincidence? Andrew with the 5 spot. I get game good. I don't get game bad. Everyone's argument summed up. What are you talking about? Starfield had a way earlier release date, so the delays helped Starfield? I didn't say anything about a delay. According to the actual documents themselves, Starfield would not be coming to market right now if it was multi-platform. They're saying what I just said moments ago. Games can come to market quicker and more effectively and more optimized when they're built for one system. Like, Oh No, It's Alex had a video about this. He thinks everything should be multi-platform all the time. I don't agree with him. I think the market demonstrates that that's actually not good for the projects. I think a far better build trajectory for projects is you build for one system and then you port and optimize later. Like Final Fantasy 16 wouldn't be hitting the market if it was multi-plat. You'd be waiting another 2 years for it. So they land there. They'll be able to spend the next couple of, however long, like a month or whatever, polish everything up, and then, as Yoshi P said, it'll come to PC once they can optimize it. Like, yeah, Jedi Survivor. If they would have built Jedi Survivor for one platform, they could have ironed all the issues out, learned all the problems, all the issues, and then spend a year porting it to other platforms. Again, I'm not saying I'm pro timed exclusivity. I'm saying you can't presume it's a negative. That's the point that I'm making. You can't presume it's a negative. I can not like it. I can say, come on, just launch it everywhere. Why do you do... Actually, I took more issue with Hogwarts because it was launching on both platforms, but there were certain quests and items only for PlayStation. I was like, I don't like that. I don't think that's good for the art. Just give it to everybody. But that's the market that we're in. We're in a market where you got to make the game more appealing on your system if it's multi-plat. Well, with 21 months, selfish gamer here, so let me buy it. More games for me. Some will come, will be okay. Some will be, but I'll be playing plenty. Yeah, but Mo, Deathloop and Ghostwire came to your box. You just had to wait. You just had to wait. Why is that an assumed negative? What if you got better versions of Deathloop and Ghostwire because you had to wait? Funny enough, Mo, according to the own documents, you would have waited anyway. If Deathloop and Ghostwire were multi-plat at launch, you would have waited. They wouldn't have launched at the same time. You likely would have got them around the same time anyway. They just confirmed that with Starfield. If Starfield was multi-plat, it wouldn't be coming out right now. We would be waiting. So you waiting a year for timed exclusivity is kind of superfluous to the discussion because you would have waited either way. I think it's important to note that you would be against this deal if PlayStation were trying to purchase, correct? A lot of people here and wanted to point that out. Yes, I have referenced Amazon, Google, Tencent, Sony. If any company was trying to buy up this much property, I would be against it because that level of consolidation is bad for any market, and then it requires massive oversight, and that's also bad for markets. Like, governmentally, philosophically, I think regulation of industries can be very bad for those industries. You can overregulate an industry, okay? You can underregulate an industry. I think mass consolidation, it checks two boxes. Number one, it silos so much control to one company, and then you need massive government oversight. Those two things combined are bad for industries where it takes place. But I'm just a pony, right? Let's not forget that we can look historically at when this happens. It's bad. That mass consolidation of ISPs and cell phone companies, the lack of regulation and oversight of that happening hasn't been good for the consumer. This isn't about, I don't like Xbox. It's, I mean, as a student of history and political science and philosophy, I think too much regulation is actually very bad for markets. Too much regulation can hurt innovation and expansion. And too much consolidation can hurt innovation and expansion because there's less motivation to do innovation and expansion. And all of those are net losses for the consumer. You get less and you tend to pay more. So I look at this deal and I think the exact same thing. This has all the hallmarks of too much consolidation and too much regulation. You're anti-free market? Yeah, you've got me politically pegged. I'm anti-free market. As I just said that too much regulation is a bad thing. But I'm anti-free market. Sure. Amazing assessment. No Face Lord with a $5 tip. Let's say this goes through. Do we not think other companies are going to go on acquisition sprees? This deal's bad all around, period. Yeah, I just got done talking about that. You might not have been here. T-Bone with a 5 spot. It's not good for consumer unless you want it to come out 2 years later and it could be downgraded. Cough, cough, Series S. Welfare Rockstar with 13 months and it's a VIP. I just want to play games on my PC. Xbox is doing Xbox PC launches and Sony isn't. So in my opinion, Sony is trash, making me wait for a game for 2 years later to buy it. And I think you're trash for not buying a PlayStation. You sound like a socialist. You sound like somebody who uses buzzwords on the internet because you're not an intellectual and you probably don't have an education. If you do have an education, you're an embarrassment to whatever degree you have. I will never... Oh, you guys are talking about DLSS over here. You understand that wanting less regulation and less government intervention is not the hallmark of a socialist. Maybe Google is your friend. It's at your fingertips that you're wasting on me. Harsh and uncalled for? What he said to me? Yeah, you're right. You're right. If you're going to stick your chin out, hopefully you can take a punch. It's about labor practices. It's about so much more than that. Please don't make me educate you on the far reaches of that as an idea of how things should operate and what government should do. It's beyond just that. Isn't that more libertarian than socialist? Someone owns a dictionary. The point that I've been trying to make this entire time is that if you look at a deal of this scope and you support it because you think I'm going to benefit as the consumer, I would say you need to make a stronger argument than just, I'm going to get games on Game Pass. I don't find that to be compelling because I think the market is bigger than you saving money on a subscription fee. Like, you saving money on a subscription and not having to buy as many games, the market has so many more levels to it with respect to innovation, expansion, new technology. new ideas, enabling developers to try new things, right? That doesn't work in a mass consolidation model. Mass consolidation model requires mass distribution for ROI and recoup of costs. So you've got to just funnel things into the subscription fee, the subscription funnel. Freyos with the $10 super chat. All those people that have Google at their fingertips yet won't do the necessary research on the topic. They just side with someone else's opinion that aligns with their own. Yo, it's good, Freebird. Lono, you have all consoles. You have no loss in things being exclusive or if they are everywhere. Most people don't. You can't expect people to advocate against their own benefit to support others. That's not how humans are wired. Okay. And I think that's part of the issue, Solemn, is that I bought an Xbox. That's all I have. Game Pass is an amazing value for me, right? You're gaming on a budget. I have no disrespect for that. I have an appreciation for having to game or live on a budget. I have been there myself, where you can only get the one thing. You're choosing between two games. I remember choosing between two games at the store. I didn't have enough money for both, okay? I don't have any disrespect for people that are in that position, that they're coming at this from that mentality of, man, that'd be amazing if all those games could suddenly come over here on Game Pass. As a consumer, there's nothing wrong with that mentality. I'm not judging your mentality. I'm not judging your place in life or where you are with finances. No judgment. Though it's not personal. I zoom all the way out and I say, be that as it may, historically, this type of consolidation actually doesn't help you. It doesn't. You think that it will because of your situation. Your situation, your context is unique to you, and you bring that to the discussion. I can't expect you to shed your perspective and where you are in life. I can't expect that from you. That's unreasonable. Okay? But if you zoom all the way out, just stand with me shoulder to shoulder as a gamer, as a consumer, as a human being, and let's look at this historically first. Let's just look at this historically. Is this really good for you historically? Is the pattern of this level of consolidation, has it been good for you in other avenues? How's that cell phone bill working out? How's that internet expansion and fiber network that we were promised? How's all that working out? It's not. It's not. So, in one area, in one respect, you aren't wrong. You aren't wrong to be like, yeah, man, this will get me more games on Game Pass. That's going to benefit me. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I remember I worked at Singular, which became AT&T Wireless. No, I'm sorry. It was AT&T Wireless, then it was Singular, and then it was AT&T. I went through 3 changes in the time that I was there. And I remember one of the talking points where we were talking to the consumers and the customers that would come in, because obviously they're like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to my bill? You're not Singular anymore, right? So we were trained to talk about all of the benefits they were going to get. Oh, you're going to get a much bigger network. Yeah, we're going to have more towers now. Yeah, better service. You're going to benefit right now. And then what happened as the years transpired? More control. The networks aren't getting updated. My phone speed's embarrassment. Coverage is still spotty in areas. Like, the actual speed that you get on your phone with respect to internet's not that impressive. It's not any better than it was like 10 years ago when I worked at the stinking companies. Well, actually, that wasn't 10 years ago. Golly, it's been a long time. 2010, 13 years ago. 13 years ago when I worked at those companies. When I worked at AT&T. It's basically the same. It's no better. I'm always better off on Wi-Fi. Now, some cities and some networks are pretty awesome for cell phone coverage, but it's nowhere near where it should be given the consolidative power that they have. William Lewis with the $5 super chat tip. Someone's in trouble. FTC hearing started. Judge's statement. It has come to our attention that someone was illegally live streaming this proceeding. Yeah, there were people live streaming it, and they had to delete their streams. They explicitly stated that nobody should be live streaming. Yeah. Yeah, some people were taking their streams down. I don't think people realize that. Don't make yourself that old. So, if you go back to when I was talking to those customers about what the benefit to them was, it wasn't false. I wasn't saying something that wasn't true. You're going to get more coverage, you get more towers. So yes, in the immediate future, if this deal goes through, you're going to get more games on Game Pass. Isn't that great? But if we're a student of history, long term, this isn't good for you. It's not. What you want from Microsoft is, what I want from Microsoft is innovation. Invest in new technology. Invest in their studios. Can you imagine what they could do with the $70 billion that they're trying to buy this with? Just take a fraction of that and just grow your existing studios. Expand them out. Make them larger. Give them better bandwidth. Give them better support. You have more studios than PlayStation. That would be what I would do if I know I'm not in charge. Oh, it's a good thing you're not in charge. That's what I would do. I would say, we got a lot of studios. We have some of the most iconic property in the history of gaming. We have some of the best pieces of property. We have Halo, we have Doom, we have the Elder Scrolls. We have some of the most recognizable titles in gaming history. And what are you doing with them? What's happening? Where are the games? Where are they? Where's all that next-gen power we were promised with Project Scarlet? Don't you think it's worrying that they made all those promises with Project Scarlet, and they made all those promises about the Series X, and what was really going on? Well, what was really going on was less allocated resources and production for the Series X so they could expand the cloud, increasing production of the Series S, launching a Series X with a larger hard drive. They didn't tell you that. Really analyze that. They told Digital Foundry, oh yeah, this will be the main console. And everybody's like, that's a bunch of bull. And here we come. FTC case basically confirms the Series S is the main console. So the same company that basically misled us into thinking they were going to step strongly into the next-gen landscape with the Series X and with technical power, they're not doing that. But you're like, but they'll do everything else that they're promising. Let them buy Activision Blizzard. They flat out lied about the Series X and the Series S. They set a Series S video to private on their video, on their YouTube channel. But you're like, all that's fine. I'm going to ignore all of that. You can have Activision Blizzard because I'm going to get more games on Game Pass. Shame on you. It's all right here in front of you. You should be way, way more up on this and more educated as to what's really going on. $5 from Zippy Narwhal. The judge has routinely cut off FTC's questions. The judge led Phil into the question to, under oath, say COD won't be exclusive. FTC is clearly done. Okay. We got the X at the same time. I didn't say that the X and the S didn't launch at the same time. I didn't say that. They the revisionist history around this is so painful. They literally never mentioned the S until it leaked. Project Scarlet in June of 2019. Game Awards 2019. Phil Spencer announces the Series X. June of 2020, the Series X is announced alongside of Halo Infinite and Hellblade. And in September, the Series S is leaked. And so then they finally officially announce it. And then we find out, as time has gone on, that Series X has never been a priority. It's not been a priority in production. It's not been a priority in games or next-gen power. It's not a priority. They marketed the Series X as the main console, and Series S was like the low entrance. Oh yeah, we wanted to have this, so we had a low entrance cost. And again, if you go back and look at the Series S video that they unlisted on their YouTube channel, it's just a bunch of promises that didn't come through about either console. That's the company you're like, no. I want them to have Activision Blizzard because I'll get more games on Game Pass. FTC's getting cooked. Yes, if you believe people who live tweet on Twitter, the FTC's getting cooked. Sure. Yeah. In a matter of 5 days, we have mounting evidence that Microsoft has employed outspending loss lead anti-competitive strategies. But you're right. The FTC's getting cooked. The FTC's getting cooked. You're right. They've clearly lost. I don't think either side is winning or losing right now. We are. You know what process we're in right now? I think some people forget where we are in the process. We haven't even gotten to whether or not they get a preliminary injunction or not. This is literally a discovery process to decide whether or not they'll get their preliminary injunction. And the preliminary injunction is not even a block. So being like, oh yeah, FTC's losing and getting cooked. What are you talking about? That's not the point of this process right now. This process is not them winning or losing. They're seeking out information and discovery to argue for their preliminary injunction. That's all this is right now. And listen, if the FTC loses and they don't get their preliminary injunction and Activision Blizzard goes forward with their purchase, at the very least, we got enough information to make all of the people supporting this, to make all the pundits and the bloggers and the YouTubers that have been pounding the drum for this acquisition, we all see where your allegiance lies. Your allegiance isn't to the gamer. Your allegiance isn't to the market. It's to a corporation. So even if they lose, the FTC has pulled back the curtain enough that I don't have any respect for educated persons with platforms supporting this deal. I don't have any respect for you. I don't. No. Because the constant obfuscation and the spinning and the twisting, no. We've seen enough. The average consumer, the average consumer that just wants more games on Game Pass, I don't have an issue with you. I get that. Simple. You're like, I'm a simple man. I have simple tastes. I just want games on Game Pass. Okay, that's fine. I don't have an issue with you. Educated persons that have researched this and done hand waving, and they've obfuscated things and spun things and twisted things. No. I don't have any respect for that. Anti-intellectual corporation cheerleading is all it is. That's all it is. For the last 8 years of coverage, whether I'm covering a single game or the industry, I fight for the user. I look at the end user, I look at the consumer base, and I say, this matters more than one brand over another. The reason that you matter more than the corporation matters is because you're the fuel in the engine that keeps this thing running. I've been quoted as saying, I want game companies to make buckets of cash. And people say, well, you're so pro-corporation. No, I'm pro-profit. Because if they make a ton of profit, they're going to keep making games. They're going to keep doing the thing that I love. And if you, as the consumer base, are engaged and you're buying games and you're happy, that's a healthy ecosystem. That leads to more games. That leads to me enjoying my hobby more. If that ecosystem and that culture gets squeezed and a bunch of people are conditioned to think in this entitlement submodel, why would I ever buy a game? Look at all the reports coming out about the cannibalistic effect. There's even more evidence coming out about this. It's having a cannibalistic effect on game purchases. And I look at that and say, well, that's not good for the ecosystem. That's not good for the consumer. That's not good for longevity. That's not good for quality going up. That's not good for my hobby. That's not good. That's not me being anti-Xbox. That's just me assessing the situation and saying, that doesn't seem really healthy. The Netflix bubble burst. This doesn't seem sustainable. Why do you always crap on Xbox Game Pass? So as a dad that has 3 kids and plays games, plus me, is a simple person? That wasn't meant as a jab. I'm a simple man with simple tastes was me saying, you don't get into all this nonsense. You're just like, hey man, I got kids. Game Pass makes sense. I don't have any problem with that. I don't. If I look at the market and I see trends going in a direction of less profit, less profitability for developers, less sales, that's really, really bad. If you've ever analyzed markets when that starts to happen, those markets can vanish into thin air like that. Look how quickly we lost, Blockbuster. Even Redbox they're still around, but they're like really hard to find, right? Like in the blink of an eye, entire industries that were just sort of staples in life are gone. One of my first jobs was working at Hollywood Video. Like in my lifetime, that industry is poof, gone. So to be like, that's a really elaborate way of saying I'm a Sony fan. That's a really elaborate way of avoiding everything I said because you're not smart enough to engage with what I said. Like, your stupidity is not my responsibility, right? If you're too dumb to enter the discussion, you're like, yeah, you're just a Sony pony. So I outline market trends and realities that can lead to profitability damage, which then can lead to less games, which then leads to me having less to do as a hobby and as a consumer. And I say all that, and your conclusion is that I'm just a Sony pony. Your stupidity is your own responsibility. Your inability to engage in dialogue about something betrays your own weakness. It's just your own weakness. You can't engage in the discussion. You're unable to. You're just derp, doesn't think how I think. PlayStation fanboy. No, actually, I have a much longer history with Xbox. I have way more games on my Xbox. I built my streaming career playing on the Xbox. I started streaming through my Xbox. I literally came late to PlayStation. And in only last year did I start leaning more toward their games because there was just more games to play over there. PlayStation exclusives is the definition of being not for the user? No, that's an incredibly lacking in nuance position. If game quality is a part of the equation, then you can't think in those reductionist ways. You can't think in those reductionist ways. That you're reducing it down to less people play, bad. Well, no, it's more complex than that. If I use Jedi Survivor as an example, if Jedi Survivor would have been a timed exclusive for Xbox, I probably would have played the game and beat it. I probably would have got a better game. Probably would have. They would have had one ecosystem to build for. They would have had to optimize for one system. And if they would have paid for that timed exclusivity, they could have stripped it down and probably got it to market faster, more efficiently, and more optimized. Instead, it lands multi-platform. It clearly wasn't ready. It probably needed 6 to 9 months of more development. So, more people got to play Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Was that good or was that bad? Well, you have to question. How do we define what's good for the consumer? Is access to the product all that matters, or is access to a quality product what matters? So, Timed exclusivity isn't the problem. Generally, what's been the problem for games over the last couple of years, as I would measure it, is games coming to market before they're ready. That's been the primary downfall of the modern game. The primary downfall of the modern game has not been, oh, your timed exclusivity is the real problem. No, the real problem is publishers needing to make the ROI, overspending on marketing budgets, talking about games way too far in the future, and then they hit the market before they're ready. Timed exclusivity might actually help with that. It's an influx of cash. You limit the bandwidth, you limit what it's built for, it can come out at a higher quality, and then it can be ported to other platforms later. That's not an automatic negative for the consumer. That could actually be a positive for the consumer. Case in point, Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. Is it an automatically negative or bad thing for the gaming community that you had to wait a year for those to come to Xbox? If it is, you've got to prove that and compel me to believe that. Because if Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo would have launched multi-platform, they wouldn't have launched when they did. It would have taken longer to come to market, so you would have waited anyway. So the issue isn't waiting. The issue isn't quality. The issue is jealousy. Well, they get it first. Oh, okay. If I'm making food for my kids, and I pull one pizza out of the oven, and I give it to my kiddo, and the other one goes in, and the way we're making them, you do them one at a time because they cook better. And my daughter gets upset. He got his first. Yours is coming. It'll be at the same quality as his. What's the problem? I'm not starving you. You got to wait 10 minutes. You'll survive, right? I always tell that to her, like, you worry about your own journey, right? He got more. He got more than me. He got to get in the car first. What? A game coming to PlayStation first is only a problem if you look through the lens of jealousy. Is it a problem? Did you get a lower quality product? Did you get a bad game? Did you? I don't think you did. You're overcomplicating it. Xbox wants more people to play their games. That's more inclusive. There it is, Eugene. The idea that Microsoft is the good guy is hilarious. Yes. I can't stare straight-faced at the emails that have come out. I can't stare straight-faced at Microsoft's history as a company and think, oh, they're the good guy. They're trying to do right by the consumer. The fact that you believe that means they've completely got you. They've completely got you. Oh, they're more inclusive. What are you talking about? You actually think that the new Final Fantasy 16 is actually causing PlayStation 5s to overheat? I'm still questioning if that's actually possible. I saw footage of a guy's doing it, and he had it closed in a small space, and you're not supposed to do that. Mine hasn't overheated. There was a person who said theirs overheated, and then they encouraged people to clean out their PlayStation, and then they said they had played for 35 hours. So, come on. Take that for what it's worth. They got the heat warning on theirs. They cleaned theirs out. They blew out the dust, and then they played for 35 hours. Like, the one video that I saw that went viral, the guy literally opened up his entertainment system, and it sounded like his PlayStation was singing a song. It's like, bro, he had it sandwiched in these shelves and closed in a glass case and a door. It's like, what are you doing? I could do that to my computer and it would shut down too, you dummy. Or, I don't understand why my computer's overheating. You put it in a glass case. Oh. Who would have thought that circulating air is important for heat dissipation? People are just stupid. That's sadly what it comes down to. Did you hear that, babe? Just playing Final Fantasy. Did you hear that, honey? What's that sound? What is that? Oh, well, I'm just going to keep playing. What's that? Is that smoke coming from the PlayStation? Open up that box that we put it in. Don't let the cat sleep on it anymore. Like, what are you doing? The air screen was fake too? Wait, when the guy... Wait, no, the video I saw, he was just recording it with his cell phone. It was fake? At least it shut off. I don't understand. I vape around my PlayStation. I let my cat sleep on it. I have it closed up in an entertainment system. I don't understand why it overheated. It's remarkable. The stupid tax could have been much higher. You protect Sony and PlayStation as if it were your company. What? Where am I protecting Sony and PlayStation? When have I done that today? When I talked about emails prove that Microsoft is employing a loss lead, anti-competitive, spend more strategy. What does that have to do with Sony? Matt Booty's own email says, oh yeah, Amazon and Google's not even a threat. And he used an analogy to video streaming services. He's like, imagine trying to spin up a streaming service today. Imagine. No, you wouldn't be able to do it. And then he comes back to themselves. And they say, well, the only real competitor to Game Pass is PlayStation. We have a 2-year head start and 10 million subs. Like, I don't see how anybody can read that email and be like, oh yeah, this is fine. They're literally saying how they view the market. They're saying they view the market as, we can outspend Sony. We could literally lose $2 to $3 billion and be in a better position, and then they don't get to become the Disney of gaming. And these other guys aren't even really a problem right now. It's not proof. It's a hypothetical question. Yeah, in 2019, he says that. And then in 2020, they literally admitted they bought Bethesda because they didn't want Starfield to go to Sony. It was going to be another timed exclusivity. Do you understand what that admission means? Is there a link to that t-shirt somewhere? Yes, you can use the shirt command in chat, or you can go, you know, the link shortener, bit.ly. You can go to bit.ly/Reforge Ripped. This is from Ripped Apparel. Their shirts are really affordable, like $14. It'll definitely support me if you go over there and if you use my link and go over there. I was talking about good guy, bad guy is so cringe. Dude, these are businessmen. They're not your friends. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you actually look at these emails, you can see how Microsoft views the market. It's just so crystal clear. I'm not saying they're the bad guy. I'm saying they're trying to employ a strategy that's not good for you and for me. I actually found the admission that they bought Bethesda because they saw PlayStation getting another timed exclusivity deal. That, to me, is more of a smoking gun than anything. Think of the power that they admitted to in that admission. Yeah, PlayStation was going to get another timed exclusivity. Yeah. So what'd you do? Oh, we just bought the company. And you're like, now, the funny thing about this is, the remarkable thing about all of this is that was a chest pound a couple of months ago. Yeah. Stay broke, Sony. Microsoft's got deep pockets. You'll never be able to outspend us. And then an email comes out from Matt Booty that's like, we could outspend them out of business. And you're like, oh, no, that's not what they meant. Oh, poor little Microsoft, poor little Xbox. They're in third place. They're just trying to make their way in the world. Hang on a minute. For about a year, I had to hear Xbox fans pound their chest about Microsoft's deep pockets and how Sony could never go toe-to-toe with them and they could never outspend them. And when Matt Booty says it, he's like, we could spend them out of business. And you're like, well, hang on a minute. We didn't mean any of that. We were only messing around. We didn't really mean that Microsoft could outspend Sony and they have really deep pockets. We were just goofing. We were just goofing. We just got a little ego happy. We didn't mean any of that. We take all that back. Microsoft and Xbox are in third place. They're the underdog. They are. Let them compete. I thought they had deep pockets and could outspend Sony, and Sony broke. Jim Ryan says he believes Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard has potential harm to PlayStation gamers. He says Sony doesn't feel comfortable providing development kits to Activision if owned by Microsoft. Also, Microsoft offers don't convince him Activision games will be made available on PlayStation. Jim Ryan says that the list Phil Spencer sent in an email of Activision games that will continue to be supported on PlayStation were older games, not new ones. For example, Overwatch 2 is on there, but not... For example, Overwatch is on there, but not Overwatch 2. People thought old Jimmy Boy taking the stand was going to be good for them. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. It does not look good if they cannot get the preliminary injunction for it. They actually either lose in their administrative hearing because you still have to block it in federal court. If I was Microsoft, I would do everything to destroy competition. Right, and I think that's part of the problem is, I'm going to be real honest with you. I think a lot of this is baked into, I want Microsoft to win, not because you think it's good for the consumer or the economy, but because you don't like Sony. You understand? I think that's the fundamental problem. I come at this and try my absolute best to make economic arguments. I try my best to make arguments about what this level of consolidation and this level of regulation, what that does to markets, what that does to consumers. And the comeback is, no, I support this because I don't like Sony. You can hear it in the way these people talk about this. It's not motivated by research or facts. No. It's motivated by a dislike for a company. Look at the way the blogs handle the topic. All the blogs that are super pro Xbox and super pro about this. There's a disdain for Sony. You make arguments for Sony? No, I don't. When I talk about what mass consolidation and overregulation does to markets, that has nothing to do with Sony. That has everything to do with the Xbox ecosystem and the culture that they're gonna foster. That doesn't do anything with Sony. I don't understand how you say what Microsoft does is anti-competitive, but when Sony pays for exclusives, that is somehow not anti-competitive. Is paying money to keep IP away from a competitor. Paying money to put an IP on your property and then sell that property is not gobbling up a company, a publisher, at a loss lead to keep control over the market. There is a giant difference between, we're going to work this exclusivity deal to incentivize people to come to our store. I referenced they used to do this with albums, right? Like Best Buy would broker a deal with a company, like we're going to sell the brand's new, Backstreet Boys album, and you could only get it at Best Buy for like the first day or something. Or they would have like they would jump street dates some days. You could get it a day early or whatever. When I worked at Best Buy, sometimes they were able to do that. They were able to broker those deals. And the difference between brokering a deal of timed exclusivity, because those games still came to Xbox, You're saying they're blocking the property from coming there. A lot of the timed exclusivity deals as of late have been 12 months. That's not the same as buying an entire publisher. They're not equal. One is about market control. The other is, oh yeah, our customers love this game. Or our customers have responded well to market research on this one. Let's buy an exclusivity deal. Let's have that one first. You're going to a store, not buying a platform. It's just an example of how storefronts have been competitive historically. A timed exclusivity deal, we talked about this earlier. This all started in the 360 era. With timed exclusivities, with GTA 4, and with Call of Duty. Microsoft laid this groundwork. They laid the groundwork with the 360. And then PlayStation starts beating them at their own game. And they're like, well, okay, we're losing on that front. Well, we can outspend them and loss lead and make it impossible for them to have this property. We'll just gobble up portions of the market. We'll go into a loss lead strategy to completely edge them out. That is anti-competitive. Brokering deals with companies you don't own isn't anti-competitive because the company can say no. Bethesda could have said no and been like, no, we don't want to do timed exclusivity for Deathloop. We don't want to do timed exclusivity for Ghostwire Tokyo. Sony doesn't have power over the market. They don't have power over that company. It's an offer that they accepted. Microsoft says, we can't get people to come over here timed exclusive. We will buy the company and force them to do it. Look at Pete Hines' email. This is so, the difference is so stark. It's so stark. It's like, we went to this company, brokered a deal, they're working with us. That's anti-competitive. No, it's not. That company could have said no. They could have shut us down and said, no, we'd rather be multi-platform. The company could say no to the purchase. That's not relevant. It depends, because they have to entertain purchase orders according to their fiduciary duty to shareholders. So, not necessarily, no. And if you read Pete Hines' email, if you read Todd Howard's blog, if you read their argumentation to the CMA and the EU, they bought Bethesda under false pretense of, well, we'll do case-by-case basis. And then as soon as they own them, Pete Hines is like, we were asked, told, to make everything exclusive. And the problem with this is, they could say no. The shareholders and the people that will benefit from this acquisition, they're all for it. Activision's all for it. Of course they're all for it. They're going to make a bundle. And even if it doesn't go through, they're going to get $3 billion. So Activision doesn't lose at all in this deal. Of course they're in favor of it. That's not equal to a timed exclusivity deal. Like, explaining the difference between a timed exclusivity deal and buying a publisher, it's insane to me that people can't see the difference. You're trying to control the market through loss lead outspend. There are literal regulatory bodies to prevent this kind of thing from happening. Historically, it's been terrible with Walmart's employed this, right? They've employed the loss lead strategy to just gobble up entire areas and just run people out of business. Well, they're still around. Does that mean it's good? Has it been good for us? Has it been good for the people that work there? Has it been good for the small businesses that shut down? Has it been good for local economies? You keep saying it's different without actually proving it. I don't need to prove it. It's demonstrably obvious. It's obvious. It's so obvious, Zubair. A timed exclusivity deal is a deal that is not ownership, and then the game goes to other platforms. Microsoft buying Bethesda and then making everything exclusive. I have to spell out how that's different? It's obviously different. Explaining how it's different is embarrassing. That's like, what's the difference between red and blue? It's obvious when you look at it. I don't have to explain how it's different. It's obvious. You just look at it. I'm saying it's a matter of degree. Right. All of these deals are a matter of degree. And this one is clearly going to the place where the regulators are saying, wait, hang on a minute. This is far more extreme than an exclusivity deal. This is far more extreme than buying a single developer. To be fair, they bring it day and date to PC streaming and GeForce Now. Can you say restricted free agency, shareholders, you better match that bag, CEO, why did you say no? Right. The idea that there's a similarity between saying, hey, you know, we would like Deathloop to be a timed exclusivity on our platform, to be like, oh, well, that's the same as buying the company and restricting all future projects to your platform? No, it's not. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna have that. You can buy it here a week before everybody else can buy it. That's not the same as buying the company, and then you can only get that product at that store. Those aren't equal. And if you do it at a loss lead to drive your competitor out of town, that's anti-competitive. If, like I gave the example earlier, if a trillionaire came to your town, bought up a bunch of the businesses, drove the prices into the ground, killed all the competition because he can literally lose the money. He's just angry, right? He's like, well, I'm going to buy all the trinket stores here, and I'm going to drive prices into the ground because I'm a trillionaire, and I can just throw money at this and lose money. And I'm going to drive all the other businesses out. They won't be able to compete. No one's going to shop over there. We have regulations in place to stop that from happening. That's literally what Microsoft is trying to do. We're going to take a mass consolidation loss lead strategy to outspend our competitors. Shrugging at that in that email, shrugging at that strategy is just remarkable to me. It's remarkable. I think that's been the most remarkable thing from this FTC case, is that people see it all and they say, oh, well. They see emails like that and they're like, yeah, but Sony does time exclusivity deals. What? That's your comeback? Sony's not on trial. It's exactly the same because the output is the same. Sony's able to do that because they got the market share without needing to buy out the studio. But it's not the same because it's not the same output because the game comes to Xbox later. It's timed exclusivity. It's not the same. See, the other thing that gets lost in this equation is a lot of the games that got locked into PlayStation exclusivity, a lot of the games that happened with are popular in the Asian market. And they have a vested interest in not wasting development time and bandwidth for a platform where their game doesn't sell well. Do we need to look at Street Fighter 6 sales? Do we need to look at how JRPGs and Japanese-based games and developers haven't done well in the Xbox ecosystem? It's not that hard to convince. That's another thing that's just, it's such a cherry-picked stat. Well, Sony locks all these games and keeps them off of Xbox. Yes, and a lot of the games cited would never have gone there to begin with because they wouldn't sell. They wouldn't sell. It's an economic decision from the developer and the publisher. They're like, we've done the market research. We're not going to sell on that platform. We primarily sell in this market to this demographic, and that's not on Xbox's ecosystem, so why in the frick would we make the game for them? A lot of the games that get cited are Japanese-based games. They're not games that would do well on the Xbox. But everybody wants to cite that and act like, well, Sony's been anti-competitive and they've kept games off of Xbox. And it's like, get the frick out of here. And the Square Enix deal, again, the Square Enix deal is unique because they, arguably, they pushed too hard. I criticized them for that. I said, y'all pushed way too hard for this. Creature, I'm going to need a thumbnail for members. I don't have it yet. If they wouldn't sell, why is Sony having to buy an exclusive? Sometimes, Zubair, it's been misrepresented. It's a marketing contract. And the marketing contract has stipulations baked into it that are just garden variety. We don't want you to go over there. We don't want you to be on Game Pass, right? Final Fantasy's in a different situation. There's been a handful of Japanese developers, JRPGs, and Japanese-based games that have gone to PlayStation exclusivity, and it's a marketing contract. So much of this has been misrepresented. They're like, oh yeah, they pay to keep games off Game Pass. And then we actually look at the contract, and it's a marketing contract with the first right of refusal clause. But all the headlines claim, oh yeah, they pay money to keep games off Game Pass. And that's not what the contract said for Resident Evil. That's not what it said. It was a first right of refusal because they were in a marketing contract. Don't you think it's interesting that that's a common talking point in this discussion, and it's grossly misrepresented and twisted and slanted? Don't you think that's interesting? That's just accepted, hook, line, and sinker. That, yep, Sony's anti-competitive. They pay to keep games off Game Pass. They pay to keep games off Xbox. And when you actually dive down deep into the details, it's like, well, actually, no. It was a marketing contract with a first right of refusal clause. They weren't actively paying to keep games off Game Pass. They didn't want to market a game that was going to their competitor subscription service. That makes perfectly good sense. Why pay for the marketing contract? Because it bolsters sales. Why else would you pay for a marketing contract? If you get to put the trailer for the game on your PlayStation YouTube channel, your PlayStation YouTube channel has massive reach. If you get to write the blogs, if you get to do the tweets, you're going to make more sales. It's a conversion accelerant. You know you're going to get more sales if you're able to do that, if you're the one putting it out there. That's all it is. It's just a conversion accelerant. So we've just generally accepted that, well, Sony's been anti-competitive, and because Sony's been anti-competitive, well, then Microsoft can be anti-competitive more. Like, because Sony's done exclusivity deals, and because Sony's paid for timed exclusivity, well, Microsoft can do more. What? Why? Why would you justify a bigger and worse thing? It doesn't make any sense. It's never once made sense to me. I saved this in the wrong folder. I'll save it there. I got to schedule the members. Listen. Oops, I got the wrong thing. Yeah. Fable. FTC and Fable debrief. I have a video about Fable. Apparently the devs have come out and started defending the game to a certain degree, and they're saying that it'll be refined. It's not even in alpha state yet, which kind of continues the conversation that we've already had, which is, why did you show us the game? Why'd you show us the game then? And so I'm going to send you guys there in just a moment. You guys have about 5 minutes. If you want to try to scramble to hit 50 members, now's a good time to do it. We're down to the more loyal core. As I start saying this, a lot of people are going to leave. I'm going to redirect you to this Avowed video, and then we're going to debrief with members. It's a great time to become a member. It's a great time to jump in. It's a great time to gift members, to reward that loyalty and the people that have been here. When we go to the premiere, I will gift what I owe you. Currently, I owe you 5. If you hit 50, I'll owe you 10. And that is a great way to be a part of everything that we do. It's a great way to support the channel. Can we go? Oh, shoot. Hang on. We lingered way too long. I'm going to set it for 12:45, but then I'm just going to push it. I'm going to push it live when you guys get over there. I'm not going to make you wait. And then I'm going to go to the recap. Yeah, schedule that. Is it Avowed or Fable? I'm so sorry. I'm talking. I'm reading and talking at the same time, and I'm misspeaking. Sorry. I told you guys I do that. I flip my words around. This video is about Avowed. This video is about Avowed. The Avowed devs have spoken out and said that they are, that that's what they're doing. They're going to refine the artwork or whatever. So I'm going to send you guys over there in a brief moment, in about 3 minutes, and then I will push the video live as soon as you guys all get over there. I'll instantly premiere it, and we'll all be able to watch it together. And then we will all be able to all go hang out as we'll be able to hang out in the premiere, and then we'll be able to hang out with members. Today was a good day. Listen, I generally think a lot of people are never going to see eye to eye on this, because some people approach it. There's people that approach it from just a very simplistic position. They're like, I'm going to get more, I'm going to get more games on Game Pass. There are people that promote it and they're in support of the deal, and they come at it from brand loyalty, fanboyism. They hate Sony. They love Xbox. I have tried every single time this has come up to purely come at this from an economic reason of this level of consolidation, loss lead mass spending, outspending your competitor and just losing money for 20 years to make their growth, to try to outspend them out of business. That to me is incredibly worrying. As a gamer, I have every system and I'm like, I don't want you doing that. I don't want you doing that to the property that you own. I don't want you doing that to the market. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of that. And so I've tried my very best to couch it in that. Is there any fan funding that I missed? I missed Brett Williams. I'm so sorry, Brett. As I've continued to say, these people don't know what they're cheering for. Imagine what Sony is going to buy from Xbox if the deal goes through. Thank you for the $5 super chat tip. I'm actually worried about Embracer Group, Tencent, Amazon, and Google. Those four, I'm really worried about what Embracer, Tencent, Amazon, and Google. I'm worried what those four will do if this deal goes through. People don't understand the reverberations and the ramifications of this. They don't. They just think in, I'm going to get more games. It's like this is going to actually ripple out and cause so many other companies to try to consolidate and gobble up. Embracer Group just did their own downsizing and shuttering and layoffs, I think, to free up capital. I think that's what's coming. And I think it's very worrying because we've seen it in other venues. We've seen it with internet service providers and cell phones. We've seen it with TV and movies, and it has not helped us. It has not helped us. You think this is the one environment where it's going to help us, and I just don't see it. Oh yeah, I forgot about Apple. Yeah, Apple's probably going to spend a lot too. Y'all are going to start thinking real differently. Yeah, man, Xbox. And then 6 months are going to go by and all these other companies are going to start gobbling stuff up. You're going to think very differently when that starts happening. You're not going to like it. Not going to like it. Especially when Apple, Google, and Amazon enter the picture, because they're going to have a vested interest in putting stuff on their platforms and their ecosystems. And all of a sudden, games and projects and studios are not going to be doing the things that you want them to do. And Microsoft fired the first shot. So, okay. I'm going to send you this Avowed video. It's going to tell you that it'll go live in 5 minutes. I'll probably push it live once we all get over there, okay? I'm also going to gift members when I get over there, okay? Do me a favor. Smash the like button on this video. It was a really fun day. There's over 800 people here. We should easily have over 600 likes. We had over 1,000 viewers the entire time. Thank you so much. If you hate watch and think I'm a pony, I don't care what you think, because your position's not intellectually founded. You're just listening to smear merchants and liars who mislead the public about me. I don't care what you think about me. If you were here, maybe you were swayed by the argumentation. Maybe you enjoyed the back and forth. Maybe you think it's fun to listen to people debate. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the bell button, okay? Let me put a link in chat. This is where we're heading. When you get over there, smash the like button. All right, when you get over there, smash the like button. We're going to be talking about, did they show Avowed too early? I will see you guys over there in the comments, in the chat, and I will give some members when I get over there.